Oh, Bulbasaur. No better place to start, but can we judge him objectively through our nostalgia glasses? Bulbasaur is pretty well known for being the easy mode choice in the early game of Kanto, so compared to the other Pokemon available to you around the time you'd be using it, it's really solid. Great utility moves like Leech Seed, Stun Spore, and Sleep Powder, along with its solid stats, just like most starters, make an easy case for a strong 4 out of 5 stars for battle prowess. Availability is a strange one since it's a starter, just because it's either completely guaranteed or entirely unattainable most of the time. But if you want to use it, you can just choose it for free, so it gets an uneasy 4 stars. Its concept is pretty good. Gen 1 have a very noticeable trend of having a pretty unimaginative concept. It's usually just an animal plus fantastical characteristic, and Bulbasaur is no different. It's a little frog guy with a bulb plant on its back, but at least it's a unique animal to choose for a grass-type starter, so 2.5 stars. Now, while Gen 1 has mediocre concept, it usually absolutely nails the design. And sure, Bulbasaur is pretty simple, but boy, it sure is adorable. Everything about it just makes you want to be its friend. I love it. 4 out of 5 stars easily. Bringing Bulbasaur to an average score of 3.625, which will just round down to 3.6 stars. Not bad at all. Ivysaur may be a direct upgrade to Bulbasaur in stats and moves, however, I try to judge these Pokemon based on the general power level of the other Pokemon around it when you would be using it. And in that case, Ivysaur isn't quite as strong as Bulbasaur. It's still solid for all the same reasons, moves, utility, and typing, but through levels 16 to 32, your opponent's Pokemon just start to outclass it with evolutions. So Ivysaur's battle prowess drops to a respectable 3. Its availability is the exact same as Bulbasaur's and every other starter Pokemon for that matter, sorry for the spoiler, it's a 4. Ivysaur's concept is a tough one to judge. Are we judging it as a standalone Pokemon or as an evolution? I'd say it's an evolution, so if that's the case, it's okay. It's not bad. It makes perfect sense in terms of the progression, but it just doesn't do much at all, so 2.5 stars. As for its design, it's pretty lackluster. It's just a slightly bigger, darker, and bloomier Bulbasaur, so it gets 2 stars, bringing Ivysaur to a total score of 2.9 stars. The main issue with choosing Bulbasaur in the games it's available in is that it has a pretty noticeable drop-off in the late game. Sure, Venusaur is incredible right away at level 32, but by the time you're in the later gyms and in the Elite Four, compared to your other options available to you, it's not bad at all, but not great. Still a solid grass type with utility, so it gets a solid 3.5 out of 5 stars for battle prowess. Its availability, as we've discussed with all the other starters, is a 4. Venusaur's concept of the fully grown frog-like dinosaur thing with a full-blown tree growing from it, it is a really cool idea for a grass type starter and a great end to the Bulbasaur line. But just like most Gen 1 Pokemon, it isn't all that creative of a concept, so it'll get a solid 3.5 stars. Its design is pretty good. I think it does a great job of fulfilling said concept, and it's a nice mix of looking pretty powerful and unique. But we have to admit, it doesn't look all that great compared to other starters, so 3.5 stars for design. Bringing Venusaur to a total score of 3.6, the same score as Bulbasaur actually, that's pretty interesting. Mega Venusaur. I have to admit, Megas are pretty hard to rank in this fashion, so take these as a little bonus with a grain of salt. In terms of battle prowess, I mean it's a Mega. They're really strong. It has an amazing ability, strong stats, great utility, and coverage. I think giving it anything other than 5 stars is pretty silly if we're comparing it to other Pokemon available at that point in the games. As for its availability, it's literally guaranteed if you chose Venusaur in the games that it appears in. So I don't know how that's anything other than a 5. Mega Venusaur's concept, however, is pretty lackluster. Its plant just gets slightly bigger. It's really not that interesting, 2 stars. But its design still looks pretty good regardless. It's still the Venusaur we know and love, but just slightly cooler. So I guess 3.5 stars, giving Mega Venusaur a total score of 3.9 stars. Do you guys want me to do the G-Maxes? I don't know, let me know, but Game Freak's favorite is next, so you don't want to miss it. Is Charmander the best Gen 1 starter? Well, Bulbasaur got 3.6 stars, so can Charmander do better? It is pretty accepted that Charmander is the hardest early game choice in Kanto, and I'm trying to judge these Pokemon based off of how they perform around the time you'd actually be using them, and in that case, it's pretty rough. It's hard not to immediately jump and give it a 1 or a 2 stars due to the awful Brock matchup and a rough moveset. But it is pretty great against the early game bugs and grass types, so it'll land an uneasy 2.5 stars for battle prowess. Availability is once again a 4, like all the other starters, since they're either completely free if you want them, or unattainable. Its concept and design are the perfect poster child for the Gen 1 stereotype of a boring concept but a great design. most of said concepts just being an animal plus fantastical trait, and in Charmander's case, yeah, it's just a lizard with a fire tail. I mean, it's not a bad concept, of course, but it's not great. 3 stars. But like I said, Gen 1's designs are usually fantastic, and it's no different here. It obviously fulfills that concept perfectly, and it is absolutely adorable along with it. You're not being honest with yourself if you say you don't like Charmander. 4 stars. Totaling Charmander to an average score... Jesus Christ. Totaling Charmander to an average score of 3.375 stars or 3.4. A lot of people point to Charmeleon when they're trashing on Gen 1, but I don't think that that's quite fair. So let's see how it holds up. In terms of battle prowess, its stats are actually pretty great, but it suffers from the same major drawback as Charmander, its awful moveset. In the games you would be using it in, it doesn't get a decent move until either 34 or 32, so it doesn't really get useful at all until right before it evolves. Sure, having a fire type is really nice in a playthrough, but man, just chucking out Ember over and over is gonna get outclassed real quick. 2.5 stars. Its availability is 4 stars, just like every other starter, and its concept really isn't all that interesting. It's just a bigger, angrier, and redder Charmander. I don't know how I can give that anything over 2.5 because it's just neutral. Its design, however, is the perfect link between Charmander and Charizard. So sure, it isn't amazing looking, but I think it serves the purpose of the middle stage really well here. 3 stars. Bringing one of my childhood favorites to a sad 3 stars overall. Charizard is Game Freak's golden child. No one's gonna deny that. However, it is split pretty 50-50 on whether people love it or hate it. So let's see if we can take off the nostalgia glasses and judge it fairly. In terms of battle prowess, once it finally evolves into Charizard is when the line really starts to shine. It has great stats, throwing out fast flamethrowers, air slashes, wing attacks, and some dragon coverage is a huge plus to have on your team. 4 stars. Its availability is also 4 stars, just like every other starter. But its concept is where it gets kind of tough to judge. Like, this is clearly a dragon in every way, yet it annoyingly is not a dragon. However, I do think that evolving from a little fire-breathing lizard into a full-blown dragon-looking Pokemon is just about perfect. So he'll land a solid 4 stars for concept. Now, its design is where it is massively controversial and argued constantly. It's totally fair to be annoyed with how much favoritism this Pokemon has gotten over the years, but the reason that it's gotten it is because it's one of the most popular Pokemon of all time, due mostly to its incredible and iconic design. So there's no way Charizard can get anything less than 5 stars for design, bringing Charizard to the highest score yet of 4.25 stars. Megas are really tough to judge in this fashion for sure, but Mega Charizard X should do just fine. No one can deny its battle prowess, the addition of the dragon typing plus the obvious huge boost in stats, oh and not to mention the absolutely massive Tough Claws ability. The only way you're giving Charizard X anything less than 5 stars for battle prowess is if you're just a hater. Its availability, similarly to Mega Venusaur, is completely guaranteed as long as you chose Charmander, with one major difference: version exclusivity. So 4 stars it is. As for its concept, I love the fact that they finally gave Charizard the dragon typing it always deserved, while making it more menacing and intimidating. 5 stars for concept. Mega Charizard X's design is, I would argue, one of the most popular Pokemon designs of all time. Definitely the most popular additional form to any existing Pokemon. Changing its color scheme to the darker black and the lighter blue fire is fire. Sorry. But yeah, this thing is so awesome. Easiest 5 stars so far, bringing Mega Charizard X to the new high score of 4.75 stars. Can Mega Charizard Y top Mega X's score? They're both Megas, they both have amazing abilities, in Y's case, Drought. Having sun-boosted flamethrowers with 159 special attack is just outrageous. Along with its other great stats and coverage moves, there's no way it doesn't get 5 stars here. Its availability is the exact same as X, it's completely guaranteed if you chose Charizard, but obviously has the same problem with it only being in one version. 4 stars. Now, its concept, we have to admit, is pretty boring. It just got spikier, really not all that interesting of a change, but there's nothing negative about it, so 3 stars. With all of that being said, though the concept is unimaginative, the design absolutely crushes it. Personally, I think this is just the fully realized Charizard. This is what it always should have been, and I like it so much more than Mega Charizard X, easy 5 stars, which lands Mega Charizard Y 4.25 stars. So that answers our question. It's pretty widely accepted that out of the Gen 1 starters, Charmander is the most popular, Bulbasaur is the best, and Squirtle is what? I'm gonna throw its hat in the ring for being the most consistent, but let's see how it stacks up. In terms of battle prowess, you really can't go wrong with an early water type. Squirtle has really solid stats, especially its defenses, which gives you a really comfortable start early in the game. However, it has the same problem as Charmander with its moveset, but it also has a similar upside as Bulbasaur with its typing against the early gym matchups. Therefore, it's gonna get a solid 3 stars for battle prowess, landing it right in between Charmander and Bulbasaur, which definitely feels right. Its availability is a 4, just like every other starter, due to either being completely free or not attainable. But its concept is where I feel Squirtle really struggles. It's a turtle. Literally, just the turtle that can squirt out water. I'm sorry, I don't know how I'm supposed to give that anything over 2 stars. However, just like most Gen 1 Pokemon, it may have a very ordinary concept, but it has a fantastic design. Sure, it's just a turtle, but hey, they took that and gave it so much character and personality. I don't think you could make a cuter turtle if you tried. 4 stars, bringing Squirtle to a total score of 3.25 stars. Wartortle is a prime suspect of the whole middle evolutions are trash idea, so let's see how trash or not it really is. It does hold its own in battle fairly well, it has all around good stats, and you can't go wrong with a water type. But man, its moveset is genuinely garbage. Similarly to Charmeleon, who doesn't get a good move until right before it's about to evolve. In the games that you would normally use it in, Wartortle doesn't get a single good water move. In Red and Blue, it doesn't get anything other than Water Gun, and the same exact thing goes for Fire Red and Leaf Green. Even in X and Y, it doesn't even get Water Pulse until 28. With that being said, I don't know how I can even give it the same score as Squirtle, so it gets 2.5 stars for battle prowess. Though, as usual, its availability is a 4, just like the rest of the starters. Some charity for Wartortle here, and it's gonna need it because it doesn't get much better for its concept. All of its Pokedex entries talk about how its ears are for balance in the water and how this tail symbolizes its longevity, but none of that is anywhere to be found with its evolution, Blastoise. So Wartortle gets the first 1-star rating in the series for concept because it just seems genuinely out of place in the line and makes no sense. As for its design, I do like the darker blue, and even though it doesn't make any sense, the tail does look pretty cool, but the ears have always thrown off its design for me, even all the way back in like 99. I just can't justify giving it anything over 2 stars here, bringing Wartortle to the new series low by a long shot of 2.375 stars. It seems like Mega Blastoise has been kind of forgotten about. Maybe it got lost in all the Charizard hype. No idea, but let's see how it compares to the other Gen 1 starter Megas. Venusaur and both of the Charizards got incredible abilities that take their already great stats to a whole other level. But wait, what do you mean Blastoise gets Mega Launcher? Yeah, and the only one of those moves it can learn in the game that you would use it in is Water Pulse and Dark Pulse. Sure, Dark Pulse is cool, but Water Pulse just becomes Surf with a chance to confuse. Are those 2 buffed up moves nice? Yeah. Does that put this ability to the level of Tough Claws, Drought, or even Thick Fat? No, sadly. But with all that being said, it's still a bulky water type with high special attack, good coverage, and it's still a Mega. 4.5 stars. Its availability is a 5, just like Mega Venusaur, since it literally is handed to you for free, and its concept is a tough one to judge. Like, if this was just a standalone Pokemon, it would be so awesome. A turtle with dang artillery on its back and 2 little wrist launchers, that's so cool. But coming from Blastoise, it isn't all that much of a change, but it's still a net positive, so 3.5 stars. Leading us into its design, which obviously fulfilled the whole tank, artillery, whatever turtle perfectly. Sure, it may look a little silly, but I don't care. I love it. It looks awesome. 4 stars, bringing Mega Blastoise to a total score of 4.25 stars. Why doesn't Blastoise get as much hate as Charizard for getting too much attention? It only has 1 less form. I don't know, but let's see how they stack up. In terms of battle prowess, Blastoise is, well, really great. Having a bulky water type is never a bad idea to have on your team. Its stats are great and well-rounded, and its moves are, wow, they're actually pretty rough. But let's be honest here. You, me, and everyone else just slap Surf, Ice Beam, and maybe Hydro Pump on him, and that's really all you need for Blastoise to pretty comfortably carry you through a lot of the mid to late game. It doesn't have to be fancy here, it just has to get the job done, and Blastoise does. 4 stars. Its availability is once again 4, like all of the other starters, but hey, that's the last time we have to say that until 143 more Pokemon go by. The concept of a turtle with cannons on its back may be subject to scrutiny in this community, but come on, man, that's so cool. This is the perfect example of a simple concept still being fantastic. It doesn't need some crazy lore, just give me an interesting animal with something that makes it special. Oh, you chose a cannon turtle? Sweet, 4 stars. Its design is similarly incredible. A lot of people still argue that it's better looking than Charizard, which is one of the most popular Pokemon of all time, so that's gotta be saying something. They made it look so strong, sturdy, and intimidating. Sure, this one may be nostalgia, but I still stand by it, 5 stars. Bringing Blastoise to the same score as Charizard actually, with 4.25 stars. Caterpie and Weedle might be why the bug type gets so much hate still to this day. Let's see how they stack up as we rate them all. For battle prowess, I judge each Pokemon based on how it does when you would actually be using it, but I mean, come on, its stats are still bottom of the barrel. Its moves are literally just Tackle and String Shot, unless you wait until level 9 to evolve it, and then you get Bug Bite, which is cool, but what's the point of that when it could have just been a special attacking Butterfree in one more level? Even on Route 1, you aren't getting through most trainer battles without switching to your starter. It unsurprisingly gets 1 star for battle prowess. Availability is obviously where these early bugs shine. They're super common, they're super early, 5 stars. And yeah, that's going to be the redeeming factor with a lot of these regional bugs or birds, I'm sure. As for its concept, I mean, it's a caterpillar. Or I guess it's actually a worm according to the Pokedex. Either way, we're really entering the doldrums of Pokemon concepts here, 1 star. Its design is, well, better than its concept. Sure, it's just a worm caterpillar thing, but considering the awful concept, they definitely did the most that they could with it. Managing to actually make it pretty cute is impressive, 2.5 stars. Bringing Caterpie to a total score of 2.375. We're ranking every Pokemon, and up next is the super exciting Metapod. Okay, so it's obviously not fighting for the highest ranking yet, but let's see if it can at least avoid being the lowest. In terms of battle prowess, its best feat is the Battle of Hardens in the anime, its stats are obviously awful, and so are its moves. Even on Route 1, you're not gonna get very far with just Tackle and String Shot. However, you do only have to use it from level 7 to 10, and in that time frame, 55 defense and HP is actually pretty bad. Gotcha. It gets 1 star, who are you kidding? Its availability is a 5, just like Caterpie for obvious reasons. Its concept is, well, a cocoon. The only reason it isn't getting 1 star here is because it at least makes perfect sense as the middle evolution in this line, so it gets a questionable 2 stars here. As for its design, I mean, what do you want me to say? Ooh, I like the green color. No, it's garbage. Not even my nostalgia from growing up with Gen 1 can defend Metapod. 1 star. Which answers our original question, as Metapod lands the worst final score so far of 2.25 stars. Butterfree puts the rest of the butterfly or moth looking Pokemon to shame. But let's see how it stacks up as we rank them all. It's actually pretty great in battle, with really solid special attack, defense, and speed coming in at the crazy early level 10. Along with its great move pool with Confusion and the status powder moves early on in the game, and even with things like Bug Buzz, Air Slash, and Quiver Dance, and all sorts of TMs for the mid to late game. It would get an easy 5 stars for the early game performance, but obviously by the late game it's going to get pretty severely outclassed unless you manage to set up with it. So I think 3.5 stars for battle prowess is fair, but let me know your thoughts on this one. As for its availability, it's a 5, just like the majority of the regional bugs or birds will be. And now its concept is where it starts to get rough for Butterfree. I mean, it's just a butterfly. Kinda. Similarly to Metapod, I think its only redeeming quality in terms of concept is the fact that it's the obvious and perfect end to the Caterpie line. So I don't know how I can give it anything over 2 stars here. And it doesn't get a whole lot better for its design. My main complaint with Butterfree is that I'm 90% sure that this was originally supposed to be Venonat's evolution. Like, that's literally the exact same face and color scheme. Come on. But either way, nostalgia and sad anime episodes can only carry Pokemon so far. 2 stars for design, bringing Butterfree to a respectable score of 3.125. Caterpie and Weedle are both trash, but which one is better? For battle prowess, they're both obviously very similar, with completely mediocre stats. However, for Weedle, the fact that its main attacking move is at least Stab and has a chance to Poison is a step up from Tackle. That and delaying evolution to level 9 to get Bug Bite actually makes sense here, so while Weedle is still awful, it's better than Caterpie, so 1.5 stars. Its availability is also a 5, just like most early route Pokemon will be, and its concept is apparently based off of like a wasp or a bee larva, which admittedly is pretty cool. So yeah, it's just an animal, but at least it's a pretty unique animal. So the viewers in my last live helped me land on 2 stars for this one. Now design is where I think Caterpie gets the edge. Where it's cute, Weedle is just kinda there. Its creepy little eyes and clearly somewhat dangerous stingers kind of land it in a weird spot between trying to be a cute little bug and a somewhat threatening looking bug, and I just don't think it works. It's pretty ugly. 1.5 stars. Leaving Weedle with the slight edge over Caterpie with the final score of 2.5 stars. I wonder which generation is going to have the best average score at the end of this Rank 'em All series, but for now it's Kakuna's turn on the hot seat. As for its battle prowess, well, it ends up being in pretty much the exact same spot as Weedle. Poison Sting is better than Tackle for its only real offensive move, and its stats are just as garbage. You do only have to use it for 3 levels until it evolves into Beedrill, or even just 1 if you waited for Bug Bite, but let's be honest, who doesn't just switch train or XP share this thing into a Beedrill? 1.5 stars. Its availability is 5 stars. Shocking, I know. As for its concept, well, it's a cocoon. Just like Metapod, who got 2 stars here, with the one difference being that Kakuna has little arm stinger things. Is that worth a higher rating? I don't think so, but let me know your thoughts here. 2 stars. Its design is actually pretty cool though, surprisingly considering the boring concept, but with the sharper corners and the piercing eyes, you can tell that it either is or is about to be pretty dangerous. So I think it's pretty cool, all things considered. 2.5 stars, bringing Kakuna to a final score of 2.75 stars. Megas are definitely the coolest gimmick by far, so let's see how Mega Beedrill stacks up as we rate them all. This thing is an absolute menace in terms of battle prowess. Sure, its defense is abysmal, but who needs defense when you have 145 speed, 150 attack, and adaptability? I mean, come on, that's just ridiculous. If you're sending this thing into battle, it's because you know you're wiping the floor with the opponent before they can even move. Easy 5 stars. Now, availability is where it's pretty hard to rate Megas. I've seen a few comments complaining about it so far, and I get it, honestly. So for Mega Beedrill, while Beedrill is obviously super common, you can't get its Mega Stone until after you get Surf and Dive, which is after the 7th gym. And it's not even until the post game in Let's Go, so this was a really hard one. Some people in my live helped me land on 2 stars for this, but let me know your thoughts. Its concept, similarly to most Megas, doesn't take many drastic changes to its base form, but just enhances the original idea. And in this case, making Beedrill so much more terrifying and dangerous worked out really well. 4 stars. And its design took that concept and hit it out of the park. The new like beveled thorax thing with even more and even bigger stingers that now look like they're more or less like jousting lances. I mean, come on, they absolutely nailed it here. One of the coolest Megas ever, 5 stars. Bringing Mega Beedrill to a very nice 4-star rating. The bug type was the worst in Pokemon up until about Gen 5, with very few exceptions. Beedrill among them, as still one of the coolest bugs to this day. So let's see how it stacks up. It is very underrated in terms of battle prowess. Getting really solid attack, special defense, and speed at level 10 is amazing. Then with Twin Needle early on and moves like Poison Jab, X-Scissor, and Swords Dance in the mid to late game, it's incredible. In one of the first Nuzlockes I ever did, I used it to sweep through Sabrina's dangerous team with ease. However, it does fall off really hard towards the end game, so I think 3.5 stars is fair. Its availability is a 5, just like all the other bugs so far, and as for its concept, it's a pretty stereotypical Gen 1 Pokemon. They just take a normal animal and then add one fantastical trait, which in this case, it's 2 massive stingers for hands, which admittedly is pretty cool, but not all that interesting. I think 3 stars is fair here. Its design, however, is amazing. Still to this day, one of the coolest bug-type Pokemon. 100% nailed the concept of a giant intimidating wasp with massive stinger hands. 4 stars for design, totaling Beedrill to an average score of 3.875. Gen 1 Pokemon have awful concepts a lot of the time, but they're still so vastly loved, and Pidgey is a perfect example of that. So let's see if it can surprise us as we rate them all. As for its battle prowess, its stats aren't bad for an early route Pokemon. It'll at least keep up in that department until it evolves, but it doesn't get any good attacking moves before it does in any game it appears in. So especially compared to the other regional birds, Pidgey is very underwhelming in battle. 2 stars. Its availability, however, is a 5, since it's available on the first or second route in every game it appears in other than Sinnoh. We mentioned its concept in the intro to this video, and yeah, it's literally just a bird. Most Gen 1 Pokemon at least add something to the otherwise normal animal, but nah, not here. That's about as 1 star as it gets for concept. As for its design, well, I mean, yes, it technically fulfilled the concept, but come on. It isn't even a cool looking bird, it's just a bird. I don't know how I can really dive any deeper on this one, other than I guess at least it isn't an ugly bird. 1.5 stars for design. So Pidgey just barely escapes the worst rating yet with 2.4 stars. Believe it or not, Pidgeotto is one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. I know, it isn't actually very good, so let's see how it does in our Rate 'em All series. It's in a very similar situation as Pidgey in terms of battle prowess. It has pretty decent stats, but it is going to start getting outclassed before it evolves at 36, but the real downside here is its move pool. In most games it's available, and it doesn't even get wing attack until 27 at the earliest, or even after it evolves into Pidgeot in the others. Now compare that to Starly and Tailo learning it at level 9 and 13 respectively. I mean, at least it gets the Aerial Ace TM, but I can't put it any higher than 2 stars, as bad as it hurts me to do so. Its availability is the same as Pidgey, of course, at 5 stars. However, its concept is, well, tough. It's still more or less just a bird, but at least it's supposed to be a somewhat edgy and intimidating bird, as well as obviously making perfect sense in the line. It's still pretty bad though, 2 stars. But finally, its design. And this is where Pidgeotto shines. I love this design. Rocking the 2015 undercut like 16 years before its popularity, a new color scheme, and admittedly a whole lot of nostalgia. I think 3.5 stars is fair for design, though I did want to put it higher, bringing Pidgeotto to a saddening final score of 3.1 stars. Mega Pidgeot is one of the coolest Mega evolutions, top 5 in my opinion, but let's see how it does in our new series where we rate them all. For battle prowess, I don't think it's quite as strong as the other Megas we've rated so far, but it is still busted. However, it is kind of a one-trick pony. 120 speed, 135 special attack, throwing out no-guard hurricanes. Granted, that one trick is pretty awesome. I think 4.5 stars is fair for battle prowess. Its availability is a weird one. You can get Pidgeot's Megastone as early as Verdanturf and Oras, but Pidgey or Pidgeotto isn't available in the wild until the Safari Zone, which isn't until after the 6th gym, so 2.5 stars for availability. Concepts are also really hard to rate for Megas since they don't normally change the original idea by much. In Pidgeot's case, it didn't really change the concept at all, other than bringing out the fully realized Pidgeot and the perfect end to the Pidgey line. So it isn't all that interesting, but it does make perfect sense. 3 stars. Its design, however, is incredible. One of my favorite Pokemon designs as a whole of all time. The massive wings with the blue tips, the Goku hairstyle, I love Mega Pidgeot so much. 5 stars for design, which brings Mega Pidgeot to a final score of 3.75 stars. Pidgeot has always been an underwhelming final evolution for me. I even personally like Pidgeotto more, so let's see who does better as we rate them all. Speaking of underwhelming, Pidgeot's battle prowess. These stats are an extreme example of how most Gen 1 Pokemon's stats are like too balanced across the board, where in later gens the Pokemon are much more min-maxed, which in this case leaves Pidgeot with a lot to be desired. It doesn't really shine in any department other than speed, as well as not really doing anything special, but it is at least serviceable even into the late game, and it can hold its own, so it gets an average 2.5 stars. Its availability is a 5 as we discussed with its previous stages, and this comment nailed it for this line's concept. It's just a bigger bird once again. It at least makes sense as the final evolution though, so I guess it gets 2 stars just like Pidgeotto. Its design, however, I think is where Pidgeotto takes the lead. I don't dislike Pidgeot. I think it's a really cool, slightly edgy bird. I love the long colored hair thing, but it doesn't really change all that much. It's not a bad design at all, but it's just kind of okay. 2.5 stars for design, leaving Pidgeot with a slightly lower score of 3 stars. We're rating them all, and it's time for the Youngster Joey special, Rattata. In terms of battle prowess, 56 attack and 72 speed is really solid for the point in the game that you'd actually be using it. Bite is great for coverage, and base 80 Hyper Fang is pretty nuts in the early game, especially paired with Guts. Rattata is surprisingly strong if you use it right. 3 stars for battle prowess. And you're kidding yourself if you think its availability is anything but a 5. This thing is everywhere. As for its concept though, it's a mouse, rat, whatever. Didn't even do the Gen 1 trope of just taking an animal and slapping something cool on it. It's just a mouse. 1 star. Its design isn't much better. Oh, and I love this idea that this comment had, so we're gonna be doing that from now on. But anyway, the purple on Rattata at least looks looks pretty good, and between the angry eyes and huge teeth, it does look fairly dangerous while still being kind of cute. 2 stars for design. Rounding out Rattata to the final score of 2.75 stars, nowhere close to the top 5, which for now is being locked down by nothing but Charizards and Blastoises. Raticate's turn on the hot seat as we rate them all. It's shockingly underrated in battle. Sure, it's frail, but with 97 speed, 81 attack, and guts at level 20, especially in games where you can use Facade, if you play your cards right, Raticate can carry your team clean through to the Elite Four. Unless it gets outsped, and then yeah, it's gonna get one shot. So considering its early to mid-game dominance, along with its late-game drop-off, I think 3.5 stars is fair, though it is pretty heavily carried by guts. Availability is a 5 for very obvious reasons. I promise this category will get a lot more interesting once we get out of the starters and first route Pokemon. 82% of you did vote to keep the categories as they are though, so here we go. Its concept is basically that upon evolution, Rattata got bigger and grew gold-brown fur. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but it obviously isn't very exciting. 2 stars. As for its design, it does fulfill the concept for sure. It loses the cute, but gains a fair amount of intimidating and dangerous, but I mean, come on, it's still just a rat. It can't be higher than 2 stars, leaving Raticate at the final score of 3.1 stars. The top 5 remains in place. Do you think Spearow can beat Pidgey's score of 2.4 stars in our Rate 'em All series? In terms of battle prowess, Spearow is definitely better. I won't deny that. 70 speed and 60 attack is genuinely pretty strong before the first or second gym. Though its moves are equally as awful, only really having Peck and Fury attack as a viable attacking move. It is great against the bug catchers and early route trainers though, so it'll grab 2.5 stars for battle prowess. As for its availability, it's not quite as cut and dry Route 1 easy as Pidgey, but it is still available on the first few routes in every main region that it appears in. 5 stars. Its concept is just as garbage as Pidgey's though, let's be honest, it's still just a bird. But this time, it's angry. 1 star. Don't worry, the podium you all are asking for is coming at the end. Its design, unlike Pidgey, doesn't even make the boring bird cute, it's actually unpleasant to look at. 1 star. Totaling out Spearow to a 2.375 star rating, hilariously tying Pidgey, landing both of them in the bottom 5. So what do you guys think of this new recording video layout thing? Let me know your thoughts. I'm very open to ideas and changes. Fearow confuses me. 25 years later, and I'm still not sure if I like it or not. So let's see how it stacks up as we rate them all. In battle, it's basically just the more offensive version of Pidgeot. Its overall stat total is lower, and it's much more frail, but 90 attack and 100 speed isn't bad by any means. Drill Peck, though it comes fairly late in the game, is an incredible move. However, that's kind of all Fearow does. Unless you're in Alola, then it gets Drill Run, which is also really awesome, so it's a pretty decent 3 stars. For those of you who care, here's a quick update about this series as a whole. Since showing my face for the whole video and refraining from using any entertaining GIFs at all didn't do anything to stop certain apps from disqualifying me, I'm done worrying about that crap. I'm just gonna put out the best content that I can as consistently as I can, so if you want to support this series and me, here's how. Either way, I appreciate you. But anyway, question about the availability ranking. For now, Fearow is a 5 like Spearow, but do you think evolution should get better or worse scores based on how far the evolution is? Like, it would totally screw over Gen 5 for sure, but let me know. Anyway, its concept is a weird one. I've been giving most Pokemon at least a 2 in concept if it at the very least makes sense as an evolution, but Fearow really doesn't. Not only is it still just a bird, it doesn't even look mildly related to Spearow if it wasn't for the colors. 1.5 stars. Its design, however, I actually kind of like. Considering its concept is just an angry bird, it does look really cool. The angry red mohawk, the long sharp beak, it looks powerful. Decent design. 2.5 stars, rounding out Fearow to 3 stars overall. Did you know that Ekans spelled backwards is... I'm just kidding. Let's see how the snake Pokemon fares as we rate them all. It is a tough one to place for battle prowess. Sure, Glare is amazing utility early in the game, but its move pool is otherwise straight up garbage. 60 attack is fine, but why is it so surprisingly frail? I think Glare alone puts it above the likes of like Weedle, who had 1.5 here, but not by much. 2 stars. Its availability is also not very simple to judge. It's a version exclusive in Gen 1 and 2, where it's still a pretty early encounter, then it's a mid-game find in Kalos, Kalos, and once again, early game in Alola, but only Ultra Alola, so I'm gonna settle on an uneasy 3.5 stars. Its concept, however, is not difficult. It's a snake. Unless you're new here, you know that's a 1 star. As for its design, I don't dislike it, but I have to admit that's probably all nostalgia. If this came out today, I would think it's hot garbage. If it wasn't purple, this would legit just be a real-life snake. 1 star. Giving Ekans by far the worst score yet of 1.9 stars, showing up big time in our bottom 5. Ekans and Arbok certainly are underwhelming. Can Arbok avoid the same fate as Ekans with the worst overall score yet as we rate them all? A lot of you mentioned Intimidate with Ekans, and yeah, it probably should have been about a 2.5, but even so, I'm not sure how much of a difference it's gonna make with Arbok's mediocre stats. 95 attack is nice, but it really doesn't have the speed or the bulk to take advantage of it. It's just gonna get taken out before it can do anything. So taking into consideration the early evolution, its pretty mid stats, and arguably the best ability in the game, I think it's pretty on par with the likes of Butterfree and Beedrill, so 3.5 stars. As for its availability, after hearing a lot of you guys' input, I agree that how quickly or easily you can reach that evolution should affect that evolution's rating respectively. But in this case, it's pretty average, so it'll stay 3.5 stars. Now, its concept is better than Ekans for sure, but not by a whole lot. It's still just a snake, but this time it's a cobra, with the intimidating face markings. So at least it's an interesting animal, but I mean, that's still all it is. I will stand by the fact that this should have been a dark type the entire time. 2 stars. Its design, however, is awesome. Maybe it's the nostalgia blinding me, but you have to admit that Arbok's design is really strong. Not to mention, it's 11 feet tall. Excuse me? Though simple, they did a great job with the concept at hand, so 3.5 stars. Which means Arbok has by far the biggest improvement yet with 3.125 stars. Pikachu is the most overrated Pokemon of all time. Though thousands of you do say it's Charizard, we're rating them all, and especially when it comes to its use in battle, Pikachu is actually bad. 35 HP, 40 defense, only 50 special attack? Talk about some weak Thunderbolts. Early Thunderwave access is really its only saving grace here, which to be fair, fast T-Waves are a huge buff to your team, but man, I can't give Pikachu any higher than 2.5 stars. Its availability is honestly much better than I remembered. It can be found before the first or second gym in almost every game that it's in, other than a few. Sure, it's the rare encounter a lot of the time, but if you want it, you can get it. 4.5 stars. Now, its concept, however, is pretty good. Sure, it's the electric mouse Pokemon, but at least it isn't literally just a mouse. It just vaguely resembles a mouse, so it's decent. 3 stars. Its design is obviously its bread and butter. And to be fair, it is adorable and obviously iconic. I prefer Chonkachu for sure, but being the mascot of the largest grossing media franchise in the world, it's arguably the most recognizable fictional character in human history. Pikachu has transcended the idea of good design. Whether you like it or not, Pikachu is far and away 5 stars, bringing Pokemon's own mascot to a respectable 3.75 stars, breaking into the new top 5 that doesn't include Megas. Raichu is and always has been one of the most underrated and least appreciated Pokemon of all time. We're rating them all, and battle prowess is one of said ways where Raichu is underrated. Sure, it's pretty squishy with 60 HP and 55 defense, but 90s in both attack stats and 110 in speed makes it a great option for a fast mixed attacker. Sure, all you're really using it for is fast T-Waves, T-Bolts, and Volt Switches, and it's not really gonna do much else, which honestly is fine. That's all it really needs to do. It fills that role really well. I was on the fence about this one, but you guys helped me land on 3.5 stars for battle prowess. For availability, we'll use Pikachu's starting point of 4.5 stars, and since it's a stone evolution, it is kind of annoying, but you can find a Thunderstone in pretty much every game that it's in by mid-game at the latest, so I don't think that this should count against it. 4.5 stars. Its concept is, once again, a somewhat mouse-like creature, so hey, we're moving past the typical Gen 1 just an animal stuff. That's nice. It obviously makes perfect sense in the line, and I have no complaints. It's nothing fancy, but it's good. 3 stars. Now, I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I've loved Raichu's design and 100% preferred it over Pikachu. I hated that you couldn't evolve it back in Yellow or in Let's Go. I loved the cheesy lightning bolt tail, the color scheme, the cute little ear curly things, but I can't deny the reality that it is vastly overlooked by its own pre-evolution. So it's gonna get 4 stars for design, bringing Raichu to the exact same score as Pikachu, 3.75 stars. Nice. Here's an updated top 5 without the Megas. Sandshrew seems to be a bit forgotten, but it's so adorable, so let's see how it does as we rate them all. Its stats are actually pretty awful other than attack and defense. You genuinely can't leave this thing in against a single special natural attacker. But my biggest complaint about Sandshrew is by far the fact that it doesn't learn a single ground type attack before it evolves in any game pre-Gen 5. And even then, it's only Magnitude. It doesn't even get Bulldoze by level up until Gen 8. Yeah, sure, you can get Dig and Bulldoze as TMs pretty easily, but it shouldn't need them to be at least usable. I guess it's a decent physical wall early game, but it'll only get 2 stars for battle prowess. Now it is on the other side of that version exclusivity coin as Ekans in the early generations, but it is otherwise a fairly early game encounter, 3.5 stars for availability. As for its concept, is it a mouse, an armadillo, a shrew? I don't know, but that's a good thing. The concept of a rodent-like creature that rolls around like an armored Sonic the Hedgehog is so cool. It doesn't have to be super fancy, 4 stars. Now, I don't know how popular of a take this is, but I absolutely love Sandshrew's design. The brick-like armored pattern, its chunky body, and its little claws, this is a great example of Gen 1 designs being simple but so good. 4 stars. So Sandshrew averages out at 3.375 stars. This Freedom All series is getting interesting as we move through Gen 1, and next up is Sandslash. It's a weird one to rate for battle prowess. As we discussed with Sandshrew, its move pool is flat out garbage until about Gen 5. Like, look at the difference here. In Gen 3 and 4, Slash is its best move. No Swords Dance, Bulldoze, Earthquake, nothing. Then finally in Black and White 2, it gets Dig, Swords Dance, and EQ late game. So saying it's trash for like 70% of the time you'd be using it is generous. Sure, 100 attack and 110 defense is really good, but with those special defense and speed stats, it's a bit of a liability. 2 stars. Its availability is going to be the same as Sandshrew's with 3.5 stars. The concept that Sandshrew's armor grew into aggressive spines and its tiny claws grew into those terrifying ones upon evolution is a really cool idea that tells the story of the defensive little youngling growing into the powerful and aggressive adult. Sandslash gets the first perfect 5 stars for concept since way back at Mega Charizard X. Its design, however, I actually like a lot. It looks really cool and threatening. It obviously fulfilled that concept perfectly, but it isn't quite peak Pokemon design, so it'll land a very respectable 4 stars, averaging out Sandslash to a solid 3.625 stars, leaving it just short of our top 5 without Megas. I love the idea of the Nidoran lines. They're both unique yet clearly similar enough to be related. So let's see which one ends up on top as we rate them all. In terms of battle prowess, Nidoran's stats are pretty well rounded, and it gives you some decent bulk early on. Having double kick early is really nice coverage against the abundant early game normal types, and obviously great against Brock in the Kanto games. It's pretty decent, but nothing special. 2.5 stars for battle prowess. In the games that it is available in, you can find it pretty early and pretty easily. Its main appearances are in the Kanto games, but as you'll notice in the majority of those, you can't actually get it prior to beating Brock, so it isn't quite on the level of the other early route mons. 4 stars. Its concept is a tough one. For the first time in Gen 1, I genuinely have no idea what animal this is based off of, and that isn't a bad thing at all. It's just a poisonous little rodent thing. If you look at that by itself, it's pretty boring. However, it is worth noting that both Nidorans are the first implementation of gender differences in Pokemon, and to an extent that has yet to be repeated, and that's gotta be worth something. It'll get a slightly above average score of 3 stars for concept. I've always loved both Nidorans, but I have to admit, the series has helped me take off the nostalgia glasses to a certain extent, and Nidoran's design is okay. This is a prime example of 3D ruining a lot of Pokemon, but it is what it is. 2.5 stars for design, landing Nidoran an even 3 stars overall. Nidorina and Nidorino are going to be tough ones to judge as we rate them all. I try to judge at least these Pokemon's battle prowess on how they would perform at the time you'd realistically be using them in a playthrough, which has worked out great, but the issue here is that you can get a Moonstone almost immediately after catching Nidorina in most games. So maybe you're using it through the second gym and that's about it, in which case it does hold its own fairly well thanks to the early evolutions. It has decent bulk and decent attack, however its moves are very lackluster. I think 2.5 stars is fair. Its availability is going to be the same as Nidoran's at 4 stars. As for its concept, it seems to have, well, evolved from a rodent-like creature to an almost dinosaur-looking thing, which doesn't really make any sense at all until you see its final evolution, which then makes Nidorina's concept a much cooler idea that fits much better. 3.5 stars. As for its design, similarly to Nidoran, 3D made it so much worse. It went from this fierce and dangerous looking creature with this gorgeous combination of blues into this gray blob. I can't stand what 3D did to most Pokemon, but that's a rant for another video. In spite of that, Nidorina will get 3.5 stars for its design, giving it the final score of 3.375 stars. Does Nidoqueen or King have a better shot at upsetting our top 5? I love them both, so let's see how they do as we rate them all. Nidoqueen is a great example of Gen 1 Pokemon being very balanced stat-wise, which is both a good and a bad thing. Obviously, it's going to be really solid for you across the board, but it won't ever be the best member of your team, except just kidding, it absolutely will for the majority of the game, since in most games you can find a Moonstone shortly after getting a Nidoran, so it is very realistic to have a level 16 Nidoqueen, which is just insane. Sure, its level up movesets are pretty bad, they do get better in the remakes, however its TM usage is absolutely cracked. Nidoqueen and King's type coverage is simply unmatched. 4 stars for battle prowess. Nidoran and Nidorina's availability were 4 stars, but as we just mentioned, the fact that you can get a fully evolved Nidoqueen before the second gym is just insane. 5 stars, no doubt, for availability. Its concept, as we mentioned with Nidoran, goes from a rodent-esque creature to a kind of dinosaur to a full-blown kaiju, which is kind of wild, but it is very unique and interesting. I mean, the game is called Pocket Monsters, so a kaiju monster is a shoo-in. 4 stars for concept. And I love its design. I go back and forth on which Nido I prefer, but there's something so iconic and nostalgic about Nidoqueen specifically. But the dinosaur kaiju-like concept was fulfilled perfectly here, while also demonstrating its maternal, protective mother idea. 5 stars. Nidoqueen lands a new high score of 4.5 stars overall, not including Megas, placing it above both Charizard and Blastoise. Will male Nidoran top its female counterpart score of 3 stars? They're obviously very similar in terms of battle prowess. As we discussed with the female, Double Kick is really nice to have in the early game. The only real difference is that male Nidoran is a little bit faster and stronger offensively, but with less bulk. And while I personally prefer that playstyle, it isn't enough to give it a higher score here, so 2.5 stars for battle prowess. I did make a slight error in the other video, saying that in the majority of Kanto games, Nidorans aren't available before Brock, but they are, in fact, available before Brock in every Kanto game other than Fire Red and Leaf Green. My bad. But even so, I think 4 stars is still adequate here, since you also have to take into account the other games that it's in. Apparently, it's clear to everyone but me that these two are supposed to be based off of rabbits, but either way, its concept as a colorful and poisonous rodent-like creature is pretty good, but it isn't all that interesting. 3 stars. Its design, however, I do think is quite a bit better than the females. Not just because it's spikier and more aggressive looking, but because it really fleshed out that concept. Most poisonous things in nature do have brighter and more vibrant colors, so I think that making a poisonous rodent purple and green is pretty cool. 3.5 stars. Answering our question, as Nidoran Male gets the final score of 3.25 stars. Nidorino has one of the most iconic scenes in Pokemon history, just to end up mid. Let's see how it does as we rate them all. Its attack stat is pretty good for level 16, but other than that, it's gonna be pretty average. The change from Nidorina's bulk to Nidorino's offense doesn't really change enough to justify a higher score. 2.5 stars for battle prowess. Its availability is also gonna be the same as Nidorina's at 4 stars, but its concept is even less obvious than the Nidorans or Nidorina. I have no idea what animal this could possibly be based off of. Needle? Rhino? Nidorina? Oh. Okay, a poisonous rhino is actually pretty cool. 3.5 stars. As for its design, holy crap, this thing has to be the poster child for 3D ruining Pokemon design. Look at how vibrant his colors were and how dynamic and lively the poses were, and then this is what we land on? That's seriously a crime. So we're just gonna ignore its existence, and as we mentioned with Nidoran Male, the bright colors for a poisonous animal makes perfect sense and it looks good. 3.5 stars. Unsurprisingly, landing Nidorino, 3.4 stars, the same as Nidorina. Nidoking is arguably the single best Pokemon possible for a Kanto playthrough. So let's see if it can dethrone the queen in our top 5 as we rate them all. Its main draw is its insane TM usage. It gets basically every TM in the game. There's nothing it can't do, and it has the stats to back it up. 102 attack and a respectable 85 in special attack and speed. Oh, and you can get it at level 16? It's far and away the best early to mid-game Pokemon in Kanto, and it's even great into the Elite Four. However, this series is about all of the games, and in the later games, the king is still pretty amazing, but it definitely isn't the best of the best. 4.5 stars for battle prowess. Its availability, as we just mentioned, is ridiculous. You can find a Moonstone very early and easily, and a Nidoran even earlier and easier. Having one of the best fully evolved Pokemon out there at level 16 if you want it, there's no better case for 5 stars. Its concept is going to be the same as Nidoqueen. A poisonous rhino kaiju monster in the game called Pocket Monsters is pretty fantastic, 4 stars. Its design is obviously iconic and nostalgic. It has always looked imposing, dangerous, and powerful. Then you add on the vibrant colors for a poisonous animal idea, and that's just about perfect, 5 stars. Landing the king in his rightful place at number 1 on the throne with 4.625 stars. Even did great against the Megas. Clefairy is a bit of a mystery to me. In 25 years, I don't think I have ever once waited a single second to evolve it into Clefable, but from what I can tell, its stats are pretty solid for the early game. It did get a huge buff in Gen 6 with the addition of the fairy type for obvious reasons, but also because its moveset was absolute garbage before then. Granted, it can learn all of the good TMs that you want, but have any of you ever actually used a Clefairy? We'll go with 3 stars here. Oh, I do have a really cool surprise for you guys in the Clefable video that you don't want to miss, but anyway, for availability, Clefairy is once again kinda weird. It's very early in Kanto, but isn't until endgame in Unova and Alola, and then is kind of mid-game in Sinnoh, Galar, and Oras. 3.5 stars. Its concept, however, is actually pretty neat. A magical fairy-like creature from space with its star-shaped body. That's creative, I like it, 4 stars. I've never loved its design personally, but it is cute, you can't deny that, 3.5 stars. Clefairy's final score is a nice 3.5 stars. The OG fairy, Clefable, is next, but today we have a first. M. Tiberius has a unique perspective for us on Clefable through his Gen 1 speedruns.
Clefable's stats seem underwhelming. It does have decent bulk, and its 95 special attack isn't bad, but its move pool makes it great. In Generation 1, it gets the incredible move Minimize and tons of special moves like Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, and Psychic. It's so good that it currently holds 2nd place on my yellow version solo run tier list. It did struggle to maintain this relevancy in Gen 3 before it received the Fairy type and some great abilities. It may not sweep a team, but it's now one of the best utility Pokemon with moves like Stealth Rock, Thunder Wave, and Moonlight. It earns 4 out of 5 stars for battle prowess.
I was on the fence between 3.5 and 4 stars here, so I appreciate the insight. Be sure to check out his channel if you're a Gen 1 fan. Clefable's availability is a weird one. It'll start at Clefairy's 3.5 stars, but similarly to the Nidos, the access to a fully evolved Pokemon at like level 10 is absolutely insane. But it's still a late game encounter in a lot of games, so it'll rise up to 4 stars for availability. Its concept is the same as Clefairy's without much change, 4 stars. However, for its design, like I just said, it didn't really change much at all. It just got bigger and less cute, 3 stars, bringing Clefable to the strong final score of 3.75 stars. Vulpix is adorable, but how will it do as we rate them all? Considering you can't get it until after the 2nd gym in any game that it's in, its stats are actually pretty awful. Most Pokemon you have at this point will have evolved at least once already. However, its moveset is actually awesome. Will-O-Wisp and Confuse Ray are super handy early on, and it gets Flamethrower shockingly early in most games, and that can't be discounted, 3.5 stars. It's usually found within the 2nd to 4th gym range, but with it being a version exclusive in just about every appearance it has, I think 2.5 stars for availability is fair. Its concept, however, is incredible. Being based off the Kitsune with the whole many-tailed fox thing, plus all the supernatural abilities, attributing to its use of the Psychic and Ghost type moves, which it should have gotten as a dual type, is an absolute peak Pokemon concept. 5 stars. Its design is also really cute. Albeit simple, it nailed the concept while making an absolutely adorable little 6-tailed fox. 4 stars, bringing Vulpix to 3.75 stars. Ninetales should have always been either part Ghost or Psychic type, and you can't convince me otherwise. But it is going to be a tough one to rate. Its stats are good across the board, but with the odd focus on special defense and speed. So it may not hit as hard as some of the other fire types, but its move pool is incredible for one. Confuse Ray, Will-O-Wisp, Nasty Plot, Flamethrower, plus the Psychic, Ghost, and Dark moves for coverage, it's a really solid fire type, 4 stars. Availability is definitely its weakest category. As we discussed with Vulpix, it's an early to mid-game encounter with the 2 big issues of being both a version exclusive and a stone evolution. So you have to wait a while to get it, and wait even longer just to use it, while Vulpix learns all the good moves, 2.5 stars. Ninetales does, however, have one of the best concepts in Gen 1. Like we went over with Vulpix, being based off a Kitsune Kitsune with spirit-like powers, and now the Pokedex just straight up mentions the legend of the whole 1,000 years and the 9th tail idea. That's a perfect concept, 5 stars. Its design is also really great, but we've gone on long enough, so it fulfilled the concept really well while also looking majestic and mysterious, 4 stars. Ninetale's final score is 3.9 stars, upsetting the top 5 and replacing Beedrill. We're rating them all, and sorry Moorwillow, but you should be. I've been playing Pokemon since '99, and I think I just now learned that Jigglypuff has 115 HP, and that's insanely high for such an early encounter. But its other stats are absolutely atrocious. So even with all of the awesome TMs that it can learn, it's not gonna do anything useful for your team at all before evolving, other than trying to land inaccurate sings. 1.5 stars for battle prowess. However, it is available either right before or right after the second gym in almost every game that it appears in, save Kalos, so 4.5 stars for availability. As for its concept, I'll have to admit I have no idea what's going on here other than it looking like it's a weird offspring between Clefairy and Kirby. It's a pink balloon thing that sings. Unless I'm missing something here, I don't know how this isn't a 1-star concept. As for its design, I have to be honest with you guys here, this is one of my least favorite Pokemon of all time, and none of its media appearances helped with that at all. But I will admit, it is at least somewhat stereotypically cute. 2 stars is the best I can do, leaving Jigglypuff with 2.25 stars and a spot on our bottom 5. Yeah, I'm sorry David, you might want to look away for this one. Wigglytuff is up next as we rate them all. Its stats are okay. 140 HP is insane obviously, and 85 special attack is decent I suppose, but with 45 speed and defenses, I'm really failing to see its use case here. Obviously it got a huge buff in Gen 6 with the addition of the fairy type along with competitive, but it's still not good, especially when compared to the other fairies that are available, but I suppose its early evolution and TM usage warrants at least 2 stars for battle prowess. Its availability is going to be the same as Jigglypuff's. Sure, it's a stone evolution, but moonstones are so early and easy to find that it really doesn't matter, 4.5 stars. Its concept is rough. I still have absolutely no idea what this line is supposed to be, other than like angry singing balloons. 1 star. As for its design, it didn't even keep the balloon shaped thing from its concept or from Jigglypuff. It just got bigger and got a white belly. I dislike it even more than Jigglypuff, and that's saying something. 1 star. Wigglytuff gets 2.125 stars overall, landing it in our bottom 5. There are so many people that never gave Zubat a chance just because of the bombardment of its encounters in the early generations. So let's see how it does as we rate them all. Its stats aren't anything impressive at all, but Poison Flying is a really nice defensive typing, and its moveset is pretty good for the early game in most generations. Moves like Bite, Wing Attack, Confuse Ray, and even Poison Fang are really solid for that point in the game, so it can at least hold its own until it evolves. 2.5 stars. I think Zubat's availability might be the most overwhelmingly obvious score of this whole series. If I could give it over 5 stars, I would. This thing is everywhere. 5 stars. Its concept is super straightforward. It takes all of the stereotypes of a vampire and a bat and makes it a Pokemon. The whole blind as a bat trope and the obvious vampire fangs, but I like how they made the stereotypes into a Pokemon instead of just copy and pasting the animal. 3 stars. I do have mixed feelings about its design. I love the color scheme, the big ears, the fangs, all good, but I've always disliked its total lack for legs or feet, though that is kind of nitpicking. It has a decent design. 3 stars. Giving Zubat the final score of 3.375 stars. Golbat is up next as we rate them all. It is decently bulky for being a fast attacker. It's another one of those Gen 1 Pokemon that got the jack of all trades stat treatment. Its moveset is decent, but it is probably going to have mostly the same exact moves that it did as a Zubat. It doesn't really get much after that other than acrobatics in the later games. So it will be a solid member of your team through the mid-game, though if we assume you're going to evolve it into a Crobat, that's really all that it needs. 3 stars for battle prowess. Its availability, as we mentioned with Zubat, is so common that it's annoying. It's an obvious 5 stars. Its concept is once again drawing on the stereotypes of a vampire and a bat, so it just gets bigger and more cartoony. It's fine. It'll stay the same as Zubat at 3 stars. Its design, however, I think is actually a direct downgrade. What are those feet things? And now it's just a flying mouth? What happened to its body? I think it really lost touch with its concept upon evolution. Its design is actually disappointingly bad in my opinion, 1.5 stars, giving Golbat the final score of 3.125 stars. Why did no one tell me how good Oddish's shiny was back in Gen 2? We're rating them all, and Oddish really closely resembles Bulbasaur in both stats and move pool. And if you you remember, Bulbasaur got 4 stars for battle prowess. So with its support moves like the status powders and healing with Mega Drain, along with 75 special attack before the second gym, there's no reason it shouldn't also get 4 stars. And as I just said, you can get it before the second gym, across every region it appears in other than Sinnoh. 5 stars for availability. Its concept seems to be based off mandrake plants, yes, like the ones in Harry Potter, but apparently they're also real plants that roots resemble human features, and I actually have to admit that's a pretty cool concept that I wasn't expecting. I thought it was literally just the weed Pokemon. 3.5 stars. It does have a really cute little face, but I think this is a good example of the idea that I generally disagree with. The whole, if this came out today, you would hate it. I can't stand that argument. Yeah, I kinda get that here. It's okay. 2.5 stars. Bringing Oddish to a surprising final score of 3.75. Oddish's score surprised me, but do you think Gloom will do the same? We're rating them all, and upon evolution, Oddish's stats don't actually get all that much better. It has the curse of Gen 1's balanced stats when it really just wants to be a bulky support Pokemon. And yes, said support moves are awesome, as we saw with Oddish, but if we're rating it on how it performs when you would be using it, it's just not as good. It's gonna start getting outclassed by stronger evolutions, similarly to Ivysaur. 3.5 stars. Its availability is gonna be a 5. I actually made a mistake here in the Oddish video. It was supposed to be 4.5 stars because I totally forgot about the whole version exclusivity thing, so here it is fixed now, and Oddish's is already fixed on the docs as well. Just like Oddish, since its evolution isn't crazy early or late. Gloom being based off a stinking corpse lily is actually really interesting. A flower like that is the perfect embodiment of the grass and poison typing here. I think it's really well done. 4 stars. Its design then takes that concept and honestly really nails it. It once again shows off a great example of how a grass and poison Pokemon should look. It may be gross to look at, but that's the whole point. Not everything should be cute or awesome. And I honestly can't believe I'm about to say this. I've always hated Gloom, but I think this design is 4 stars, bringing Gloom to once again a shocking final score of 4 stars, landing Gloom in the top 5. I think it's safe to say the Gloom video shocked everyone, including me. So let's see how Vileplume stacks up as we rate them all. It's really solid in battle, with utility from status moves, healing, and some solid offensive options with its 110 special attack. I do wish it didn't have the Gen 1 too balanced curse and moved some attack to HP, but it's still great. It's the perfect Venusaur substitute. 4 stars for battle prowess. I see a lot of comments saying that the stone evolution should take away from availability, but I don't really agree. In most games, you can find at least the common evolution stones at about mid-game, if not earlier, which is fine for a final evolution. 4.5 stars, just like its Prevos. Its concept as the Rafflesia flower, a flower that uses its awful odor to attract prey, is an amazing idea for a grass and poison type. 4 stars. Its design, however, I think is far less creative than Gloom, where Gloom shows you that it's the stinking poisonous flower. Vileplume just looks like a flower you would bounce off of in Mario Kart. I don't think it fulfilled the concept as well as Gloom. 3 stars, giving Vileplume the solid final score of 3.9 stars. Paris, I really wish you were better. You're so cool. Sure, you have some awesome utility, mostly due to Spore, which is great, other than the fact that you'll pretty much never outspeed anything to go along with 35 HP, middling defenses, and 2 quad weaknesses. I want you to be better, but you're really just not. 1.5 stars for battle prowess. However, you can find it early in most games it appears in, even before the second gym, and all of them actually, other than Sinnoh as usual, and on the second island in Alola. So it'll get 4.5 stars for availability. Now this concept has to be one of the coolest in all of Pokemon. I'm sure most of you have heard of it by now, but it's based off a real-life parasitic fungus that takes over its host's mind and body, and then to keep it PG, forces it to spread its spores more or less. Tell me that's not an amazing concept. 5 stars. Its design also did a really good job at demonstrating the beginning stages of said parasitic fungal takeover. But at first glance, if you weren't aware of said concept, it's just an ugly bug with mushrooms on its back. So I think it'll land on 3.5 stars. Landing Paris a respectable 3.625 stars overall. Parasect is up next as we rate them all. It's decent in battle. Obviously, it has the glaring issue of having 2 quad weaknesses along with 30 speed. Sure, its attack and defenses are pretty good, but you just cannot leave this thing in on so many different Pokemon. Really, all it's gonna do for you is spore things, since the rest of its moveset leaves a lot to be desired. It never really gets a good grass or bug move for it until super late. Sure, it has utility, but it's 2 stars in battle. Availability is gonna be 4.5 stars, like we explained with Paris, Lapras, where we also talked about its concept being based on the parasitic fungus that basically body snatches insects, which is such a cool idea for a Pokemon. And now with Parasect, it just takes that idea to the logical next step, 5 stars. Then its design delivers on that concept really well. The fungus has sprouted out of its back in order to spread more spores, which in real life ends said bug, so the white eyes are a really nice detail here. I just wish it was more obvious that the mushroom took over and destroyed the bug instead of just being a hiding spot for it. It's still great though, 4 stars. So Parasect gets a nice 3.875 stars overall. Venonat is one of the most forgettable Pokemon ever, probably since it didn't appear in a base game for 20 years. Let's see how it does as we rate them all. You normally catch it at about level 25, which is both good and bad. It's good because you only have to wait 6 levels before you get a Venomoth, but it's bad because my god, those stats are awful for that point in the game. Now it does have 2 really awesome abilities that both have their uses. Compound Eyes, Stun Spore, and Sleep Powder is really useful, but that's only useful if you can either outspeed or take a hit, which it probably won't. 2 stars for Battle Prowess, though it's actually pretty straightforward for its availability. It's only available in Kanto and Johto all the way until Gen 8 and 9 if you don't count Pokeradar junk. And in those regions, it's a mid-game encounter in every game other than Crystal, where it's in Ilex Forest. 3 stars for availability. Venonat was clearly supposed to evolve into Butterfree, but that's going to reflect more so onto Venomoth, so its concept seems to be an amalgamation of all sorts of different insects. So Venonat's concept is pretty plain, but it's better than just copy and pasting an animal like other Gen 1 Pokemon. 2.5 stars for just being neutral. As for its design, it's a pretty cool looking little bug. The big eyes and little hands at least make it somewhat cute, but at the end of the day it is extremely forgettable. 2.5 stars once again, which makes Venonat's final score as uninteresting as the Pokemon at 2.5 stars into the bottom 5. Venonat was clearly supposed to evolve into Butterfree, so where will that leave Venomoth as we rate them all? It does lose Compound Eyes upon evolution, which does kinda suck, but it still has Tinted Lens, which is a fantastic ability, and its stats are pretty decent. 90s in special attack and speed are pretty good, but unlike Butterfree and Beedrill, you don't get that early game dominance with it since it evolves at level 31. And at that point, it's just gonna get pretty severely outclassed by other fully evolved Pokemon, unless you're gonna use it in more recent games where Quiver Dance and Bug Buzz make a huge difference. 2.5 stars. Availability is gonna be the same as Venonat at 3 stars, and it seems to be based off of a Swallowtail Moth, which are toxic, so yeah, it is just literally copy and pasting an animal, but at least that animal makes perfect sense as a bug and poison type. 2.5 stars. However, its design is where the issue arises. I'm convinced they just straight up switched Butterfree and Venomoth's evolution line, along with the fact that it's just a generally unappealing and boring Pokemon other than it's shiny. So with those things in mind, Venomoth gets 1 star for its design, bringing it down to 2.375 and into the bottom 5. Have we ever actually figured out what the bottom half of Diglett looks like? Well, let's see how it does as we rate them all. Diglett's battle prowess is, I think, artificially boosted by the fact that you find it immediately before the Electric Gym in Kanto. Its stats are pretty unique to Gen 1 Pokemon by actually being min-maxed, but to a bit of an extreme. To be fair, it does just make Surge completely free, and it's probably evolving immediately either before or after. Also, the only other regions to take into account here are Galar and Paldea, where it will suffer, therefore it'll get 3.5 stars. As we just mentioned, it is available before the 3rd gym in every game it's in, so that'll land a nice 4 stars for availability. Its concept of taking the game of Whack-A-Mole and turning it into the literal mole Pokemon hits the nail right on the head. I think it's a pretty cute and unique idea for a little ground type, 3.5 stars. Its design, however, I hate to do it to the little guy, but it has to be one of the most plain designs ever. I mean, it's just 4 ovals. I'm pretty sure my 2-year-old accidentally drew that this morning, but I do think it's cuter if you pretend the nose is instead a wide open mouth making the shocked face. I know you guys aren't gonna let me hear the end of this one, but it's 2 stars, meaning Diglett's final score is 3.25 stars. Dugtrio is the original glass cannon. Let's see how it does as we rate them all. It's obviously very strong and very fast, and that's kind of the whole story. No, but for real, it does absolutely wreck shop in Gen 1. All it really does is fast digs and fast earthquakes, which is kind of all it needs. But oh wait, they gave it bulldoze and sucker punch in Gen 4. It absolutely fills its role, and it fills it well. But you do still have to be careful with it. It's not taking any hits, obviously. 4 stars. It doesn't evolve super late or anything, so it'll keep Diglett's availability of 4 stars. Oh look, you leveled up in Whack-A-Mole. Now there's 3 of them. And the flare more of that idea is kind of losing its luster. I honestly think it's kind of underwhelming as an evolution, but it's still a pretty fun concept that works. 3 stars. Its design isn't necessarily worse than Diglett's, it's just 3 of them, which at least fulfills the concept of the whole whack-a-mole thing, or like a group of moles. I don't see how I can bring this up or down from Diglett, it's the same thing. 2 stars. Giving Dugtrio the final score of 3.25, the same as Diglett actually, which makes sense. Charizard is so overhated because it got so many forms, yet Meowth has the exact same amount. We're rating them all and let's see how it does. I honestly don't think I ever knew that Meowth had 90 speed. That's pretty nuts for the early game, but too bad the rest of its stats are pretty bad. Granted, it does get Technician in the remakes, which is amazing for moves like Fake Out, Bite, and Fury Swipes, which will help it get to that somewhat late evolution. 3 stars for Battle Prowess. It's really only available in Kanto, Johto, and Paldea, where you can find it between the 2nd and 3rd gyms, but it is a version exclusive, so that will knock it down to 3.5 stars for availability. And I have to admit, I thought its concept was just like a greedy cat, really boring, until just now actually, where I see it's based off of a Japanese legend, the Beckoning Cat or the Lucky Cat, and that's actually really awesome and makes sense, so a surprising 5 stars. Its design, however, I don't think would be anywhere near as liked as it is if it didn't talk in the anime. If it was just like a cute cat sidekick, it wouldn't have lasted 2 seasons. I'm not really a fan of this design at all, I'll be honest, but it does really deliver on said concept and it is pretty cute, so 3.5 stars. Bringing Meowth to the final score of 3.75 stars. Persian falls into the same trap as Raichu, always being forgotten about because of its pre-evolution, which is a shame because it's awesome. Its stats are the typical Gen 1 jack of all trades, plus a shocking amount of speed, which back in true Gen 1, speed was king. But Persian kept up as the generations came through. Getting Technician was a nice boost to its mediocre attack, and sure, it's never gonna wow you in battle, but it does get good moves and a crazy list of awesome TMs. It's great right when it evolves, but it does fall off pretty hard in the late game. 3.5 stars. Availability will stay the same as Meowth's at 3.5, yet strangely enough, upon evolution, Persian loses its connection to Meowth's concept of the Beckoning Cat legend almost entirely. It's instead based off of leopards or cougars, though I guess it does also go off of another legend in Latin America, but that seems like it might be a bit of a stretch. 3.5 stars. Its design, however, I actually love. This one may be nostalgia speaking, but I think it looks way better than Meowth. It's so cool. The gem on its forehead makes it look like some mysterious ancient cougar or some sort of mythical cat. 4 stars. So Persian falls just short of Meowth. Its final score is 3.625. You know what's even more annoying than Psyduck not getting the Psychic type? It not getting Water Gun until Gen 4. Sure, it gets Water Pulse and Confusion earlier and earlier as the generations tick on, but it's still just bad, considering it evolves at level 31. Its stats just don't cut it. 2 stars. Psyduck's availability is probably the toughest score to figure out so far. It can be found all over the place across like every game. Super early in some, like Sinnoh and Alola, but in a lot of those games, it's locked behind either Surf or one of the later fishing rods. So I think we'll average it out at 2.5 stars. For concept, I actually made a poll and the majority of you agreed that the normal type Pokemon should have had a slightly higher concept. Since sure, they're boring, but it makes perfect sense for a normal type to be a normal animal. So they'll bump up to 2 stars, and I'm gonna assume that translates to water types as well. So Psyduck's concept of just being a chunky yellow duck with headaches so bad that it gives it psychic powers it's a little better. 3 stars. I actually love its shiny, but its design is just okay. Sure, it's kind of cute in a is it okay? I'm kind of concerned for it type of way, but other than that, it's pretty boring. I wish they did more for it. 2 stars. Bringing Psyduck to a kind of sad 2.375 and into the bottom 5. Golduck is one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, and no, I'm not kidding. So let's see how it does as we rate them all. It has a severe case of the Gen 1 too balanced stat spread, but 95 special attack and 85 speed isn't bad at all, and it has okay bulk to go along with it. Its level up moveset though is total garbage like Psyduck's, in well, pretty much every game. But all it really needs is Surf, Psychic, and Ice Beam, and it'll do some solid work for you throughout the middle game, but that's kind of all it's gonna accomplish. It really needed the Psychic type. 3 stars. Its availability will stay the same as Psyduck's at 2.5. Its concept is once again just a duck, but with some platypus thrown in there this time, but I feel like they kind of abandoned the whole Psychic type headache whole idea, so 2.5 stars. We updated the early normal types as well, so check the docs. Its design, however, I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite water types to this day. Sure, a duck is a boring animal, yet they somehow made it cool and fierce and dangerous looking with its big claws, crown-like headdress with the mystical gem. Such a fantastic and underrated design. 4 stars, giving Golduck a decent final score of 3 stars. Mankey is up next as we rate them all. It is really good in the early game, with high enough attack and speed to one-shot pretty much any normal or rock-type Pokemon that you'll be facing with moves like Karate Chop or even Cross Chop at level 22 in Alola. But it evolving at 28 does bring it down a little, since its poor defenses will start to be a bit of an issue. 4 stars. It is available super early in every region that it's in, but with it being a version exclusive, it will be brought down to 4 stars. Mankey seems to be based on a conglomeration of different primates, and maybe more specifically the pig-tailed macaque, but angry and with a pig nose. Now, you guys did not let me hear the end of missing Golduck's relation to the Kappa, apparently, but I double-checked here, and this is literally just a pig-monkey thing. So I really don't see the vision here, but at least it is unique. 3 stars. And its design kind of delivers on that concept, I suppose. I actually do like the design quite a bit. I think it's a cute, angry little hairball. Nothing about it is even remotely monkey, yet it's clearly a monkey. I don't know, it confuses me, but I like it. 3 stars. So Mankey's final score is 3.5 stars. I'm so glad Primeape finally got an evolution. It really needed it after Ash did it so dirty. We're rating them all, and Primeape's 105 attack and 95 speed is actually really good for a mid-game fighting type. It's gonna outspeed and take out a lot of the common typings in the game, but it is gonna start to fall off towards the end game, hence why they gave it an evolution. But in every region before Paldea, you're stuck with the pretty solid Primeape, 3.5 stars. It'll keep Mankey's 4 stars for availability, and its concept is mostly the same as Mankey's. It's an angry pig-monkey creature. Once again, I don't really get it, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, at least it's unique, 3 stars. Its design, however, actually delivers on that concept pretty well this time. It isn't as clearly a monkey, but more of a convincing hybrid-type creature, and this time the design aspects of the weights on the ankles and the boxing glove hands convey the fighting type really well, though I do think the glove hands look pretty dumb. So it may have conveyed the concept better than Mankey, but I think it just ends up looking worse. This is another one of those Pokemon that looked infinitely better in 2D. Please bring back the Gen 2 through 5 sprite style, please. But anyway, it'll end up balancing out and getting 3 stars for design as well, landing Primeape with 3.375 stars. How do you think Growlithe will do as we rate them all? Its stats are surprisingly good for a first stage puppy Pokemon. 70s in attack and 60 in speed is pretty nice, not to mention what's arguably the best ability in the game, Intimidate. Its moveset in the early games was pretty awful, but to be fair, so was every fire types. It does get much better in Gen 4 though, with some really solid moves early. I was gonna put it at 3 or 3.5, but Intimidate will do enough to bring it up to 4 stars for battle prowess. Its availability is the other side of the version exclusivity coin as Vulpix, even appearing on the same routes in Johto and Kanto, but with one major difference. Growlithe is available way earlier into the game in Unova and Alola, 3.5 stars. Its concept, similarly to Vulpix, is incredible, but now being based off these Chinese and Japanese guardian statues that seem to be a mix of lions and dogs. I love it, 5 stars. Its design then portrays that concept wonderfully. The strong and brave pose for our little guard dog, with the coming-of-age mane of a lion and the colors of a tiger for a little flair. A fantastic design, 5 stars, totaling to 4.375 stars, placing Growlithe just below the King and Queen on the top 5. Arcanine is easily the best fire type in Kanto, but will this legendary Pokemon be the one to finally usurp the throne from the King and Queen? Arcanine is an absolute monster in battle. Just look at these stats. It's genuinely just really good at everything, even having better stats than its home region's fire starter, Charizard. Then you throw on the best ability in the game with Intimidate, and then E-Speed upon evolution, and you've got yourself 5 stars in battle prowess. Availability is its one weak point, but it will stay the same as Growlithe at 3.5 stars, since sure it's a stone evolution, but you can find a Firestone really easily and early on in every game it's in. Its concept, as we mentioned with Growlithe, is based on the Chinese guardian lions or even the Japanese lion dogs that stand guard in front of shrines, 5 stars. And its design takes that concept and crushes it out of the park. The mane of a lion, colors of a tiger, yet somehow still looking like a dog. I'll admit this is my favorite Pokemon of all time, but it doesn't get much better than this, 5 stars. Meaning Arcanine's final score is 4.625 stars, which ties the king for the number 1 spot. Nice. Poliwag is up next as we rate them all. It does have a surprising amount of speed with 90, but its other stats leave a lot to be desired. Especially in the earlier gens before the physical special split, its stats are just unfortunate. However, early access to Sleep with Hypnosis is really nice, and its ability Water Absorb has its niche uses for sure, though mostly for pivoting and Nuzlockes and such, but still handy, 3 stars. As for availability, it's kind of odd. It's locked behind the Good Rod in its home region of Kanto, which isn't available until 5 badges in. However, in Johto and Alola, it's available really early on with an Old Rod or in Brooklet Hill, 3.5 stars. Poliwag's concept as a tadpole whose skin is transparent enough to see its swirling intestines, therefore allowing it to use said swirling to hypnotize its opponents, is a really interesting and creative concept that I like a lot, 4 stars. However, its design just doesn't deliver. With that concept, you could have had a super mystical looking tadpole, but instead it's just a little blue blob with Jigglypuff's graffiti on its belly. I think this is one of those instances where the design really falls short of the concept. It's still kind of cute, but it could have been so much better, 2.5 stars, bringing Poliwag to a final score of 3.25 stars. Let's see how Poliwhirl does as we rate them all. Its stats are, well, kind of disappointing for an evolution. Its 90 speed is nice, but it doesn't have very good bulk or attack, and its moveset is pretty garbage. But similarly to Poliwag, its 2 upsides are Hypnosis and Water Absorb, which are nice, but once something evolves, you would hope it would contribute to battle a little bit more than this, 2 stars. Its availability will stay the same as Poliwag's at 3.5 stars, and now its concept has the same starting point as Poliwag, which is fantastic. A tadpole whose visible swirling intestines are hypnotizing. Then as the next step in its evolution, it should be in the middle of the tadpole's metamorphosis, starting to grow arms and legs and such, which once again is really cool, 4 stars. However, they completely flop on the design. Not only does this thing not look like a tadpole or a frog, or really anything in between, but now it has these goofy boxing gloves. Like, I get that this was supposed to be a hint at its future fighting type, but they just look so dumb, along with losing any of the cuteness that Poliwag had, 1.5 stars, leaving Poliwhirl with 2.75 stars. Poliwrath was the only water fighting type all the way until Gen 5, or even Gen 9 if you don't count Legends, so let's see how it does as we rate them all. Its typing is really cool, but it was considerably worse before the physical special split. With its primary typing being special and there just not being very many good fighting moves, it suffered. After the split though, its stats are actually pretty decent for a physical attacker, and its water absorbability is really handy, but at the end of the day, it's very average. There are so many better water type options in every region it's in, 3 stars. Availability will stay the same as Poliwag at 3.5 since water stones are not difficult to find. Now I'll admit, I was ready to totally trash on Poliwrath for its concept of being a weird not frog thing. But as I was doing research for this, I see that it's actually based on neoteny, a real life condition where some animals never fully reach maturity and stay juvenile. And that's actually really cool and super interesting for a Pokemon that started out as a tadpole, 5 stars. Oh, but its design. Sure, with this new info, it makes a lot more sense and fulfills that concept, but it's still just really dumb looking. If I didn't do the research here, I would have had no idea what this is supposed to be. I've never heard of this until just now, so it obviously doesn't portray it very well. I'll settle on 2.5 stars for design, bringing Poliwrath to the final score of 3.5 stars, surprisingly the highest of its line for now. Abra and its whole line are going to be tricky as we rate them all. The first confusing thing to figure out is Abra's battle prowess, since, let's be honest, it should never actually see battle. It only knows teleport, and it's just going to get Switch Trainer XP shared. So should that make it a 0? A 1? Well, how about the games that you can get some strong TMs it can learn? 105 special attack and 90 speed is more than enough to sweep through pretty much everything you'll face before level 16. So what, 4? 5? Well, neither of those answers sound right. So I asked you guys in some polls and in the Discord, and well, the answers were all over the place. But I think I'll land on 2 stars. Thankfully, its availability is really easy. You can get it shockingly early in every single game that it's in, 5 stars. Its concept, as made pretty obvious by its naming theme, is based off magicians and psychics, as well as being vaguely based on a fox, which are mythologically tied to magic and trickster lore, 4 stars. Its design is charmingly simple while keeping an air of mystery. I think it pulls off the concept really well and is somehow adorable and creepy at the same time, 4 stars. So Abra's final score is 3.75 stars. Kadabra might actually be the second or third best Pokemon for a Kanto playthrough, which is saying a lot. But let's see how it does as we rate them all. Kadabra is the definition of a glass cannon, but with 120 special attack and 105 speed at level 16? Who cares what its defenses are? It's sweeping through anything and everything, especially in Gen 1 proper. You don't even need to evolve it, and it's still a monster. And it stays great as the generations tick on with moves like Recover and Calm Mind to set up. Considering what levels you would normally be using it, it'll get 4.5 stars, since some people will have to stick with it until the end game. Availability is 5 stars, just like Abra, and its concept is largely the same as well, but just leaning heavier into both the magic and the fox aspects, 4 stars. Its design, however, is absolutely incredible. I love the addition of the pink symbols, the mustache, the bigger tail, peak Pokemon design, 5 stars. Bringing Kadabra to 4.625 stars, tying the number 1 spot. Could Alakazam be the first 5-star Pokemon in our Rate 'em All series? Let's see. For battle prowess, I mean, come on. Do I really need to break it down here? Its stats are obviously amazing, and in true Gen 1, it's the undisputed best Pokemon in the game. And it remains one of the best in the generations to come, as its move pool just gets better with more utility, recovery, and coverage. This is the easiest 5 stars for battle prowess so far. Its availability is where the controversy lies. Abra is available very early in every single region it appears in, and thanks to trait evolutions, it is available to you at level 16. You can have arguably the strongest Pokemon in most games at level 16. How is that not 5 stars? But I hear your argument on this one. Trait evolutions are essentially paywalled or social life walled, and that's really rough. I personally think that the positives outweigh the negatives here, but I can't deny the fact that so many Pokemon fans were just outright unable to get Alakazam, and that really sucks. 4.5 stars. Its concept is mostly the same as its Prevos, but with an eerily close connection to Baphomet. You guys should really pause here and zoom in and read this because it's actually really interesting. 5 stars. Its design completely nailed the concept if you read it, on top of just being an incredible looking and iconic Pokemon. 5 stars, meaning Alakazam has the new highest overall score of 4.875. Incredible. Mega Alakazam has the highest special attack of any Pokemon other than Legends. Let's see how it does as we rate them all. Should I just skip over battle prowess? 175 special attack, 150 speed, calm mind, recover, coverage. I mean, come on. This is one of those instances I wish I would have done a 10-star rating system because 5 stars just doesn't do it justice. Its availability isn't quite as simple. Alakazam got a controversial 4.5 stars, but when you can get the Megastone varies per game. You can't get it until closer to the end game in X and Y, but you can get it really early in ORAS, surprisingly. So it will get brought down to 3.5 stars for availability. Alakazam's concept doesn't change too much upon Mega Evolution, but that isn't a bad thing as it's already a fantastic concept just brought to the next level, 5 stars. And its design is incredible. I love that the armor turned into more stereotypical wizard sleeves along with the massive beard and mystical gem. It just dove full on into the sorcerer sage motif and it looks amazing just like its whole line, 5 stars. Landing Mega Alakazam 4.625 stars and the second highest Mega score. Machop is up next as we rate them all. And right off the bat, we have to mention its 2 really solid abilities, especially Guts, which is a huge boost to Machop's already impressive attack for the early game with decent enough physical bulk to put it to use. Its main downside is somewhat compounded. Its abysmal speed and special defense really stands out, but it's made even more of a problem by Machop's fairly late first evolution. But it's an overall solid early game fighting type, 3.5 stars. But is it actually early game? Well, oddly enough, no, not in its home region. It isn't available until mid-game, but in literally every other region excluding Unova, it's available as early as the first or second gym. But there are so many Kanto games, so 4 stars. Now, what is its concept? I suppose it's a somewhat reptilian, humanoid, wrestler thing. It's admittedly confusing, but it is a unique and original idea, unlike most Gen 1 Pokemon. 3.5 stars. Though its design is a tough one. Starting with a confusing concept lands you a confusing design. It's supposed to be the superpower Pokemon, but it has the body of a human toddler. I do like the tail and head ridges though, making it look more reptilian. This is a tough one. 2 stars. So Machop's final score is 3.25 stars. Can Machoke live up to Kadabra's impressive showing as we rate them all? In terms of battle prowess, it does still have the same 2 strong abilities as Machop, but its stats just don't improve all that much. Guts boosting its base 100 attack is really nice, and it does get some good moves with coverage in the later gens, and bulk up in the late game, which will come in handy for people who have to stick with it if they can't trade evolve. And in that case, it's going to be pretty severely outclassed later on since it doesn't have the speed or bulk to take advantage of its high attack, 3 stars. Its availability will stay the same at Machop's 4 stars, and it also maintains the same concept as Machop as a somewhat reptilian humanoid wrestler creature. But now it's just gotten bigger and more reptilian, 3.5 stars. However, its design I think is a step up from Machop. Now the superpower Pokemon actually looks superpowered. Its face and head have also gotten more reptilian, which is cool, though now its body is like literally just a gray human. Underwear and toes and all, which is weird, along with what I'm assuming are stretch marks to show rapid muscle growth, which is odd, but a nice touch, 3 stars. So Machoke's final score is 3.375. For those of you who hate trait evolutions, I have a little gift for you. Machamp. Let's see how it stacks up as we rate them all. Its stats are nothing to scoff at, 130 attack with decent bulk along with either Guts or No Guard, both really useful in their own way. Similarly to Machoke, it gets some strong moves, some coverage, and bulk up in the late game. The one major difference is the fact that you can get these much better stats at level 28 thanks to trait evolution. Machamp will carry you through any physical matchup straight to the end game, where it will still be a really solid fighting type for your team, especially if you give it Earthquake, 4 stars. Its availability, as we discussed at length in the comments of the Abra lines videos, is going to be docked for being a trade evolution, and it doesn't even get the consideration for a higher score like Alakazam since you get it at 28 instead of 16, 3 stars. Its concept is mostly the same as Machoke, but now with a possible link to Hindu gods, like these two here I'm not going to try to pronounce, but I think that that's a stretch, 3.5 stars. Its design is definitely better though. Thankfully it loses the clearly human body of Machoke with the obvious extra arms and the seemingly alien feet. I do think it portrays the concept by far the best out of its line, as well as having the least amount of glaring negatives. It's a really solid design, 4 stars, landing Machamp the final score of 3.625. Will Bellsprout outdo Oddish as we rate them all? Its stats are definitely not your typical grass types. 70s in attack is actually really nice for an early route Pokemon, but its other stats are obviously really bad. It does have more or less the same move pool, including the nice utility moves, but it doesn't have the same benefit of the gym matchups as Oddish. It isn't available until after the second gym in Kanto other than Let's Go, and the first 2 gyms in Johto are pretty rough for it, 3 stars. Normally I don't go into specific gym matchups for Pokemon because it gets really messy really quick, but with Bellsprout it's actually only available in Johto, Kanto, and midway through Kalos if you don't count endgame fluff or island scan shenanigans. But with its early availability in most of its appearances and considering version exclusivity, 4 stars for availability. Its concept as a carnivorous pitcher plant is pretty interesting and definitely fits for the grass poison type, 3.5 stars. And its design then pulls off that concept pretty well. It's really clear what it is, since it's kind of literally just that plant, but with beady eyes and little legs, but I think giving a carnivorous plant legs so it can actually be an active hunter is a hilarious twist on the idea, and it's kind of cute, 3 stars. Bellsprout's final score is 3.375. Follow so you don't miss the next one. How will Weepinbell score as we rate them all? Its stats obviously improve upon evolution, but honestly not by much. It does keep the nice utility moves from Bellsprout, but it really wants to be an offensive Pokemon, especially as the Pokemon it will be facing will get stronger. But too bad it doesn't even get Razor Leaf until level 42? This might actually be the worst moveset I've seen so far. It really needs the Sun Up with Chlorophyll to be even remotely useful. So thanks almost entirely to utility moves and some TMs, it'll get 2.5 stars for battle prowess. Now I did screw up in the Bellsprout video saying that it wasn't available until after Misty, but that's obviously not true, so I've already bumped up its availability and battle prowess both by half a star. Availability is going to be the same 4.5 stars as Bellsprout, along with its concept really not changing at all as a carnivorous pitcher plant, which is fine, 3.5 stars. But its design, I think, is genuinely awful. It's just the bell part of the plant now, and for some reason it has these large, creepy, googly eyes that just loses all semblance of cute from Bellsprout, as well as not even being a little bit convincingly carnivorous and dangerous like Victreebel. I know middle evolutions are supposed to be awkward, but this one just feels genuinely not needed, or at the very most, poorly executed, 1 star. So Weepinbell gets 2.875 stars. Will Victreebel redeem the line? Follow to find out. Can Victreebel redeem itself after Weepinbell's awful performance? Well, in terms of battle prowess, it does get a sizable upgrade in its stats, having 100s in both attacks and a decent enough bulk and speed, especially if you can get the Sun Up with Chlorophyll, though it does still have the same glaringly bad moveset as Weepinbell. It will be pretty useless in the middle game if you evolve it early, but by the end game you'll have moves like Sludge Bomb, Leaf Blade, and fast one-turn solar beams in the sun. It can be an absolute monster, 4 stars. It does evolve through the Leaf Stone, but since they're readily available in the mid-game, it'll keep 4.5 stars for availability. The concept for this whole evolution line is very linear and coherent without much change, so 3.5 stars. Its design, however, portrays that concept by far the best out of its line, showing a truly carnivorous and even aggressive pitcher plant. The addition of the teeth, the whip-like vine, the threatening eyes, Victreebel is a massively underrated grass type in design. I would argue it's the best in Gen 1, 5 stars, bringing Victreebel to 4.25 stars overall and into the top 5. Follow so you don't miss out on the next one. Tentacool is one of the most common Pokemon overall, but I don't think I've ever actually used one. I always immediately grind it to evolve first, and that's probably why I've never realized how awful its physical defenses and HP are. I know it's the jellyfish Pokemon, but holy squishy. Granted, its speed and special stats are pretty nice, along with Water Poison just being a great defensive typing. Its moveset has always been pretty good across the board, and it just gets better in each generation. But considering when you would normally get it, 2.5 stars for battle prowess. Now this thing is everywhere other than Unova and Paldea, but it's locked behind Surf in every single region other than Hoenn, where you can get it with the Old Rod, 3 stars for availability. Tentacool seems to be based off, well, obviously a jellyfish, but more specifically the Tentacoolata class of comb jellies. Sound familiar? While they quite literally said copy-paste, it does make for a perfect water poison type Pokemon, 3 stars. Its design then obviously portrays that concept well, but with a rather large addition of these Ruby of the Sea gems that can shoot laser beams from it? That's so weird. I love it. Tentacool has such a unique design that it rises above its average concept, 3.5 stars. Landing Tentacool 3 stars overall, follow so you don't miss out on one of my favorites. Tentacool is one of the most underrated Pokemon of all time, and I'll explain why as we rate them all. Water Poison is an incredibly defensive typing with 8 resistances, along with Tentacool's 120 special defense, 100 speed, and decent special attack. In the early gens, it was mostly just chucking out Surfs and Ice Beams, but its movesets have just gotten better and better along with the generations, with things like Toxic Spikes and Sludge Wave, which are especially useful since the introduction of the Fairy type. It's going to win you most special matchups, and it's otherwise really solid across the board. 4 stars for battle prowess. And as we discussed with Tentacool, it is everywhere, but locked behind Surf in most regions. 3 stars for availability. Its concept, however, takes a huge step up from Tentacool. It now seems to be a mix between a Portuguese man-of-war jellyfish and a full-blown kraken, which is just so much cooler. 4.5 stars. Then its design just delivers. The clearly jellyfish-like top half, fit with laser-firing gems, then the squid-like jaws and tentacles on the bottom met perfectly with those intense eyes. Tentacool doesn't get nearly enough love for its design or its performance, simply because it's such a common encounter. 5 stars. Landing at 4.125 stars overall, follow so you don't miss the next one. Geodude is certainly one of the Pokemon of all time, but how will it do as we rate them all? Honestly, it's extremely underrated in battle prowess, mostly due to it being a complete joke in the first gym across the regions, which you can definitely blame on its 2 quad weaknesses, and yeah, that's fair. But if you just aren't dumb about where you use it, Geodude is actually kind of amazing in the early game. Its 80 attack and 100 defense is really all it needs to crush pretty much every physical matchup, especially with the abundance of normal flying and bug types early on. Its moveset is fairly lackluster though, so Geodude will get 3.5 stars in battle prowess. It is surprisingly available really early in pretty much every region other than Kalos, so 5 stars for availability. Its concept is pretty self-explanatory. It's a rock that is alive and has arms. I love the little guy, but that's a 2.5 star concept. It makes sense, but it's very bland. And I know this is blasphemy to admit as a Gen 1er, but I really just don't like its design. If this came out in later gens, we would all be trashing on it, let's be honest. It'll get 2.5 stars since it isn't a bad design, it's just kinda there. So Geodude gets 3.375 stars overall, and do you think Graveler will do better? Follow to find out. How will Graveler do as we rate them all? Well, it's actually really similar to Geodude in battle prowess. Its attack and defense are amazing right when you get it, and even manages to stay really good into the late game if you can't evolve it. Its move pool is much better though, with Earthquake, Rock Blast, etc. Though its 2 glaring quad weaknesses do become a much bigger problem into the mid to late game, as the Pokemon you face get more coverage, especially if you're someone who can't evolve it. So it'll get 3.5 stars. Availability will once again be 5 stars since it's everywhere. But ooh, another trait evolution's coming up, you don't want to miss that one. But anyway, now it seems to be based off a yokai called the Tumbling Monster, and maybe this one is debatable, but I love lore-related concepts. 4 stars. Its design then honestly nails that concept. It totally embraces the whole rolling over things and crushing them tail, and it looks just about as cool as a rock can. 3.5 stars for design. Giving Graveler 4 stars. Nice. How angry do you think the comments will be over Golem? Follow to find out. Will Golem crack the top 5 like Alakazam did? Let's find out as we rate them all. At first glance, it doesn't look like it got all that much better than Graveler upon evolution, but if you look a little closer, gaining 20 to 25 in every stat is a pretty nice upgrade, especially when you consider that you can get it right at level 25. As we discussed with Graveler, it's a physical tank that can fire right back with some solid moves as long as you aren't just dumb about what you send it in on. It'll get 4 stars in battle prowess. Now for availability, the category you all came for, apparently. If you scroll through the last 10 or so videos, you can find tens if not hundreds of comments complaining about this category, some of which are just misunderstanding the criteria, while others are simply hating. So let me break down the system. Availability has absolutely nothing to do with encounter rate and everything to do with how much of the game it's available for. Rarity means nothing when you can just re-encounter, but being locked behind 5 or so badges means significantly more. With that being said, there are penalties for trait evolutions and version exclusivity, -1 and 0.5 stars respectively, not including other factors that dock it further or bring it back up, like being a fully evolved Pokemon before the second gym. That's the criteria we've been using and will continue to use. You can dislike it all you want, and definitely let me know when I actually miss something like I did with Bellsprout, and I'll fix it, but the criteria is not changing. So anyway, Golem will get 5 stars just kidding, 4 stars. Its concept is mostly the same as Graveler, being based off the Tumbling Man, but with a twist of what may be a fan theory here, but it mixing with Machop when they get traded. I didn't mention this with Machamp, but it gaining Graveler's extra arms, and then Golem gaining the reptilian face, that's really cool. 4.5 stars. Its design, I'm actually not really a fan of. I think the Alolan line is just all out better here. The idea of gaining reptilian features is cool, but man, you can't just slap a lizard face on a perfectly round rock and call it good. I actually think Graveler looks better. 2.5 3.5 stars. So Golem's final score is 3.75 stars, not reaching the top 5. Ponyta is actually going to be a tough one to judge as we rate them all, since when you get it is so different depending on the region. Its 85 attack and 90 base speed is insane and awesome before the first gym in Sinnoh, and even after the third gym in Hoenn, but it's really not great at all when you find it in the mid to late game in Kanto. It doesn't have the great ability of Growlithe or the great utility of Vulpix, but it does have better stats, so 3.5 stars. Its availability, as we just mentioned, is kind of all over the place and I can't decide, so I'm gonna let math do the work here. 2.5 for Kanto, 5 for Sinnoh, 3.5 for Hoenn averages to this number, so 3.5 stars for availability. There are a lot of different fiery horses in mythology across history, so you could argue a higher score, but I think horse but on fire is a pretty basic concept. Very cool, but basic. 2.5 stars. And as I've mentioned a few times before, Gen 1 Pokemon are the masters of boring concept but wonderful design. Ponyta may be simple, but it's also elegant, noble, and adorable. 4 stars. So Ponyta's final score is 3.375. Rapidash is one of the more forgotten Pokemon of Gen 1. Let's see how it does as we rate them all. Its stats are really solid across the board, obviously shining and attack and speed, but with a surprising amount of bulk considering, which is pretty typical of Gen 1 stat distribution. But why does it get Poison Jab by level up? Mega Horn at least makes sense, but Poison Jab? I've gotta be missing something here. But its overall move pool is okay. It's typical of an early physical attacking fire type. It isn't gonna do all that much else, but it will do it well. Though I do find it to be the least compelling Gen 1 fire type to use unless it's in Sinnoh where you're more or less forced. 3.5 stars. Its availability, as we mentioned with Ponyta, is all over the place, but thanks to some math, it'll get 3.5 stars as well. Its concept is, well, pretty much the same too. It went from fire horse to bigger fire unicorn, 2.5 stars. But I can't be the only one that thinks its design might have actually fallen off a little bit from Ponyta. Don't get me wrong, it still looks really good, especially in the Gen 5 style sprites, but I feel like it just lost some character from Ponyta. 3.5 stars. And wow, Rapidash is really mid across the board. 3.25 overall. I think I've been using Slowpoke wrong my entire life. We're rating them all. I don't think I've ever realized this thing was a physical attacker. I've been rocking nothing but Water Gun and Confusion this whole time. Oh, that's because those are the only moves it really gets? Fair enough, I guess. It is bulky for sure, but obviously it isn't going to be hitting very hard at all. But it does at least have 2 really useful types, and Yawn is nice utility. Although having to deal with these pretty mid stats all the way until level 37 to evolve is pretty awful. 2 stars for battle prowess. Its availability is kind of all over the place, locked behind Surf or Super Rod in Kanto, but then super early in Johto, kind of mid-game in Kalos, and once again super early in Alola. Averaging out its score per region leaves it with this number, so 4 stars. I have absolutely no idea what Slowpoke is supposed to be based on, even after looking it up, so it's for the most part a totally unique idea of this semi-marine animal that fishes with its tail, which is pretty interesting for sure. 3.5 stars. As for its design, this is one of very few derpy Pokemon I actually kind of like. Most of them do absolutely nothing for me, but something about Slowpoke's design just has so much personality, which is impressive for something that barely moves and doesn't really have any notable features. 3.5 stars. So Slowpoke's final score is 3.25 stars. Slowbro's up next as we rate them all, and I love this guy, so let's see how it does. Its stats are really solid across the board. It's obviously slow, but otherwise right around 100 in all of the important stats is really great, coupled with its nice typing of water and psychic, and some awesome moves like Yawn, Amnesia, Slack Off, Psychic, Surf, Ice Beam. I mean, come on. I know using a tank is an unpopular idea in a playthrough, but it's basically unstoppable if you use it right. 5 stars for battle prowess. A huge upgrade from Slowpoke's 2. Its availability, however, will take a step down from Slowpoke's 4 to a 3.5, since its evolution is so late in the game, especially for those games where you get Slowpoke really early. That grind is absolutely brutal. I also lowered this for Rapidash, by the way, for the same reason. Slowpoke's concept is arguably one of the most creative and unique so far. As we discussed with Slowpoke, it didn't seem to be based on anything in particular, but a semi-marine animal who fishes with its tail. But now it evolves because it actually caught something, and that something stays there as a part of the evolution, plus also maybe this Japanese legend, but either way, that's an awesome concept. 5 stars. Its design then portrays that concept really well, along with somehow maintaining Slowpoke's adorable derpiness while also being clearly capable and dangerous. I don't like derpy Pokemon as a rule, but man, this thing has a great design. 4.5 stars. So Slowbro's final score is 4.5 stars, landing it in the top 5. Mega Slowbro is such a disappointing Mega Evolution, which is sad because I love Slowbro. We're rating them all, and at least in terms of battle prowess, it's still great. Slowbro got 5 stars here for its great bulk, setup, moves, and coverage, and then all it does is get better when it Mega Evolves, obviously, so it'll stay 5 stars. As for its availability, its Mega Stone Magnetone isn't available until after the 6th gym in Oras, so it will drop down from Slowbro's 3.5 to 2.5. I do like the concept of Mega Slowbro a lot, for the same reasons as Slowbro itself, but now it gets completely swallowed up by the shelter that it caught, which is pretty hilarious. 5 stars. But its design, I really don't like it at all. It's arguably my least favorite Mega. Slowbro has such an amazing design, but now it's just like floating in this thing with its little head and arms poking out. I'm sorry, but I think it's genuinely awful. This concept could have led to a much cooler Mega design. 1 star. So Mega Slowbro's final score is 3.375. Magnemite is one of the Pokemon people point at when they're hating on Gen 1, so let's see how it does as we rate them all. Its 95 special attack is crazy strong for an unevolved Pokemon, along with having this insanely defensive typing and good utility with T-Wave. It can easily carry your team early on, though its awful HP and speed will start to be a bigger issue before it evolves at level 30, so 3.5 stars for battle prowess. When it's available varies pretty greatly between games. It's mid-game in Kanto, Hoenn, and Sinnoh, pretty early in Johto and Oras, then very early in Unova and Alola, so its average availability will come out to a 3.5. Magnemite's concept may seem bland at first glance, but being a mysterious floating mechanical being that can be found right by the Moo Moo Milk Farm in Johto just screams UFO concept, which is eventually all but confirmed with its evolution Magnezone. 4 stars. As for its design, I have to be honest, it is a super basic and pretty bland design. It's a little metal ball with screws and magnets attached. It pains me to do this because I love the little guy, but it gets 2 stars. So Magnemite's final score is 3.25 stars. Magneton is wildly underrated, especially in battle. 120 special attack is amazing for an electric type, then couple that with its 95 defense and its super defensive steel typing. Then with utility from T-Wave and being able to hit like an absolute truck with Thunderbolt and Flash Cannon, it's by far my most used electric type across all the generations. But with that being said, its low HP, okay speed, and quad weakness start to hold it back a little in the late game, so it'll get 4 stars for battle prowess. Its availability will stay the same at Magnemite's 3.5, and then its concept, as we went over with Magnemite, is loosely based on a UFO and or a strange sentient mechanical being, which is really awesome. 4 stars. Its design I might actually be alone on. I love it. I know that it's just 3 Magnemites, I get that, but somehow that's never how it's come off. I just see it as this unique mechanical and magnetic anomaly, and I don't know, I've just always liked it a lot, arguably more than Magnezone. But yeah, I can't give it more than 3 stars. At the end of the day, it's just 3 Magnemites. So its final score is 3.625 stars. Did you know that Farfetch'd only had 65 base attack until Gen 7? We're rating them all, and I thought this thing was bad now, but holy crap, it used to be so much worse. It really doesn't have a single redeeming quality, other than its unique held item, the Leak. But as we discussed with Pikachu, those don't count here, otherwise yeah, every evolved Pokemon is much better with the EV Light obviously. So sure, it can learn Swords Dance and Agility, but it really doesn't matter. It can be an okay flying type in the early game, but those stats are atrocious, and the idea that it's actually going to contribute at all in the late game is a bit far-fetched. 1.5 stars. Its availability is weird though. It's an early to mid-game encounter in most regions, but it's also available for an in-game trade early on in Kanto and Kalos. 4 stars. Its concept is actually pretty hilarious though. It seems to be based off the Japanese proverb, "A duck comes bearing onions," basically the ingredients you need to turn it into a duck stew. So this is literally the easy target Pokemon, which is really funny. 5 stars. Its design I don't think portrays that concept very well though. It always seemed more like a feisty little duck using a stick as a sword, you know, a brave little guy. Not at all the gullible easy target in its concept. And it's just a generally unappealing Pokemon. 2 stars. So Farfetch'd's final score is a surprisingly high 3.125. Doduo is up next as we rate them all. I don't think I've ever realized how squishy it is, but to be fair, I don't think I've ever actually used it. I always immediately evolve it into Dodrio. But it can be used early in Kalos, where 85 attack and 75 speed is actually really nuts, but its moveset is actual garbage. 3 stars. As for its availability, it's a mid-game encounter in Kanto and Hoenn, then as we just mentioned, surprisingly early in Kalos, so it'll average out to 3.5 stars. And it seems to be based on a conglomeration of different flightless birds throughout history, but with the obvious change of 2 heads, which is really the epitome of Gen 1 concepts. Normal animal plus fantastical characteristic. 3 stars. Boy, we're really in the middle part of the decks where most Pokemon are quite literally just mid across the board. Its design, though, I do like quite a bit. That mix of like ostrich, dodo, and kiwi with powerful legs and beak with the goofy little face and poofy body. I think it's done pretty well. 3.5 stars. So Doduo's final score is 3.25 stars. Dodrio is arguably the best Gen 1 bird, so let's see how it does as we rate them all. Really, if you look at its stats, it's just a better Fearow. 20 extra attack with a little more bulk and speed. It even has basically the exact exact same moveset. So it's definitely better than Fearow, but not by a whole lot, 3.5 stars for battle prowess. Its availability, however, is not nearly as high. As we went over with Doduo, it's either a mid-game or somewhat early-game encounter depending on the region, 3.5 stars. Dodrio's concept, however, is much more interesting. It starts with the conglomeration of different flightless birds, but now it has these 3 heads that are inspired by Buddhist asuras, a 3-headed demigod whose 3 faces embody its 3 emotions, and I love me some good lore, 5 stars. Its design then pulls it off pretty well. It once again looks powerful and dangerous, like an ostrich-cassowary mix, but its 3 heads are supposed to be joy, anger, and sorrow, and it's clear which one is sorrow, but I can't really tell with the other 2 unless joy is just really happy to be on site with everyone. Still though, 4 stars, so Dodrio's final score is an even 4 stars. There's no way Seal is anyone's favorite Pokemon. I guess it's kinda cute, but let's see how it does as we rate them all. Let's not sugarcoat it here. It's awful in battle. Its stats aren't very good at all, especially considering you can't get it until 3/4 into most games. Its moveset is decent enough, and you really can't go wrong with the water type, but chances are you don't ever actually want to send it into battle. 1.5 stars. As I said, it isn't available until late into most games. It's locked behind 5 badges in Kanto, 7 in Johto, and basically 8 in Unova, and actually just after the first grand trial in Alola, so its availability will average out to 2.5 stars. Seal is based on, well, a seal. It's a baby seal, but it does also seem to have some elements from other Arctic marine mammals in there, like narwhals, walruses, and belugas, so it at the very least makes sense, 2 stars. Its design is pretty cute, and obviously pulls off the concept pretty well, but this is about as boring as it gets for Pokemon design. I love simplicity, but to an extent. This is literally just a seal with a horn and tusk, 1.5 stars. So Seal's final score is 1.875 stars, the worst overall, but let's be honest here, who's actually surprised? Dewgong is up next as we rate them all, and it really just got worse after Gen 1. It used to have just the one special stat of 95, which is pretty decent, but now it's split and only has 70 special attack, and just really nothing else going on for it other than some okay bulk. Water Ice is an okay typing. It does have some offensive uses in the late game. It even learns some really good moves by level up in TM, but as we've established, its stats are bad. It's just pretty bad. 2 stars for battle prowess. Its availability will stay the same as Seal's at 2.5, along with its concept being literally the exact same. It's a conglomeration of different Arctic marine mammals. It's boring, but at least it makes sense for Water Ice type, 2 stars. As for its design, I don't think it pulls off the mix of animals as well as Seal does. Dewgong literally just looks like a sea lion with a horn, but it does somehow manage to be really cute and kind of cool looking, 2 stars for design. So Dewgong's final score is 2.125, landing it just above Seal in the bottom 5. And unbelievably tying Wigglytuff, which is horrible because I can't stand that thing, and I actually kind of like Dewgong. Follow so you don't miss the next one. Grimer's up next as we rate them all, and it shockingly has 80 attack and HP, which actually isn't bad at all. Except, just kidding, it's useless because all of its moves are special other than Pound and Fling. So other than a few annoying niche moves, it's literal garbage in battle. It can't do anything offensively and is too slow and squishy to even attempt to. But no, I haven't forgotten about the physical special split. Normally it doesn't make much of an impact on these ratings, but here it really does, because before the split, all of these decent poison moves were physical. So Grimer was, well, still pretty bad, but not useless, so it'll get 2 stars. As for its availability, its worst region is Kanto, oddly enough, being all the way on Cinnabar, but you can get it pretty early in Hoenn and Unova, so it'll average out to 3.5 stars. It's obviously based on Pile of Sludge, but honestly I could see this as a positive or a negative. On one hand, the pretty popular horror trope of slime monster or even pollution, radioactive waste, leading to these new monstrous creatures, but on the other hand, it's just a pile of sludge. I'm gonna give it 3 stars because I think the positive part that I mentioned is actually pretty interesting. Its design, however, is really just a pile of sludge, yet it somehow looks good. I don't know how, it must be the nostalgia talking here, but its almost mischievous smile just fits perfectly on a little sludge monster, 2.5 stars. So Grimer's final score is 2.75 stars. How will Muck fare as we rate them all? As we discussed with Grimer, it was much better before the physical special split with 105 attack and strong stab sludge bombs. Couple that with the fact that it's actually really bulky with hundreds in HP and special defense, it was really solid back in the day, but post-split, even with the introduction of the fairy type, it's just not that good unless you're toxic stalling, and then you're just toxic. It'll get 2.5 stars for battle prowess, basically solely for its bulky toxic stalls and maybe gunk shot. Its availability starts off at Grimer's 3.5 stars, but I am going to dock it half a star for being such an unnecessarily late evolution, especially if you're using it in Hoenn or Unova. That's a very long and awful grind with Grimer, 3 stars. And as we discussed with Grimer, it's clearly based on living toxic sludge as the result of pollution or radioactive waste, which is simple but interesting. 3 stars. Its design, boy, I can already hear the comments for this one, but I like it a lot. I don't know how you could portray a living blob of toxic sludge any better, honestly. I've always really liked Muck, but I know that at the end of the day, it's just a purple blob. 3 stars for design. So Muck comes in at 2.875 stars overall. Shellder is a weird one to figure out. We're rating them all, and its 100 defense is amazing, and 65 attack is decent, but god, 40 speed, 25 special defense, and 30 HP? Oh my god. It's really hard to give it an average score here, because especially with its 2 really awesome abilities, Shellder can be an awesome physical wall for you if you use it right. But you have to use it right, otherwise it's getting one-shot by pretty much any special attacker. Also, depending on which game you're playing, its moveset varies drastically. Back in Fire Red Leaf Green, it's actually terrible, but in Gen 6 and 7, its moveset is incredible, so it's gonna get an uneasy 3 stars for battle prowess. Its availability isn't easy to figure out either. It's locked behind Surf or Super Rod in Kanto, Sinnoh, and Galar, and then the Good Rod in Johto, Kalos, and Alola, basically, and practically in the end game in Unova, so it'll average out to 3 stars in availability. Its concept, however, is not difficult at all. It's a clam, or a scallop, whatever. It's a bivalve sea creature, and that's it. 2 stars because at least it makes sense as a water type, though I'm starting to regret that change. And its design, I mean, come on. It's literally just a clam, but purple with some cartoony eyes. The only good thing about Shellder is its cry from Pokemon Snap. 1 star. So Shellder's final score is 2.25 stars, landing it in the bottom 5 alongside the likes of Metapod. Oof. Can Cloyster redeem itself after Shellder landed in the bottom 5? We're rating them all, and it has the same problems as Shellder in battle, the tale of 2 sides here. It obviously has amazing defense and pretty solid attack, but you have to use it right, because 45 special defense and 50 HP is just pathetic. In the games where it gets Icicle Spear, it's amazing, especially with the ability Skill Link, but in the games where it doesn't, it's, well, still pretty solid actually. Ice Water typing is really useful offensively, especially in League 4, but it's pretty bad defensively, which is rough for a Pokemon who wants to be defensive, obviously. Cloyster can be amazing, especially with Shell Smash, but I'm on the fence here, so I'm going to end up with 4 stars in battle prowess. Its availability is actually going to get a bump up from Shellder, since by the time you have a Shellder, you probably have a Water Stone already, meaning you can get Cloyster instantly. Now, you probably shouldn't skip out on the level up moves, but it is available to you, 3.5 stars. Its concept is once again just a bivalve creature, a clam, oyster, whatever, with the slight boost of the face being a black pearl, 2.5 stars. Its design, however, I think is actually really awesome. Obvious adult jokes aside, its shell having the massive spines and extra layers of defense does a lot more to sell the defensive fortress idea, with the admittedly oddly placed horn showing its potential for offense as well. I think Cloyster is really cool, 4 stars. So Cloyster has one of the biggest upgrades yet with a final score of 3.5 stars. We finally made it to the Ghastly line. We're rating them all, and Ghastly is just insanely strong for an unevolved Pokemon. Sure, its defenses aren't great, but 100 special attack and 80 speed is just nuts, and its Ghost Poison typing makes up for its poor defenses with 3 immunities thanks to Levitate and 2 quad resistances. But its actual impact in battle is pretty much reserved to just support and utility with Hypnosis, Confuse Ray, Curse, etc., since it just doesn't really get any attacking moves other than maybe a good TM here and there in the newer games. So with that, I don't think it can really get higher than 3 stars for battle prowess. Ghastly is actually available super early in every region it appears in other than Kanto, oddly enough. So it'll average out to 4.5 stars. Oh no, not 4.5 for a trade evolution, here we go. Ghastly is pretty clearly based on folklore from many different cultures about spirits, and more specifically the Will-o'-the-Wisp, which is really cool of course, but it even goes a step further with its poison typing being linked to this specific legend of these spirits that spread diseases, so 5 stars. Its design then really nails that concept with the clearly Will-o'-the-Wisp like aura or poisonous gas, the devious menacing eyes with a mischievous smile, and even some sharp teeth to top it all off. Fantastic design, 5 stars. Which lands Ghastly 4.375 stars overall and a spot in the top 5. Haunter is a super underrated middle evolution. We're rating them all, and its 115 in special attack and 95 speed is really solid. Where Ghastly was mostly focused on utility moves like Confuse Ray and Hypnosis, Haunter can still do those things well, but it also actually gets some attacking moves like Hex, Shadow Ball, and some incredible TMs. In Kanto, all you really need is the Psychic TM, and Haunter is a monster. It would be pushing 5 stars, but the fact that some people can't evolve it and have to take it to the end game, where it does start to fall off a little bit, will keep it at 4 stars for battle prowess. Its availability will stay the same as Ghastly at 4.5 stars since it's available super early in most regions. Haunter, similarly to Ghastly, is based on a few different spirits throughout folklore, one of which only has its head and claws visible, the other licks people to sap their energy, and then the same one for Ghastly that spreads diseases. 5 stars, and it's not even close here. And as I listed off those legends, I'm sure you noticed that Haunter perfectly represents all of them, while also still looking incredible. This is peak Pokemon design and concept, 5 stars. Giving Haunter the final score of 4.625 stars, tying Kadabra in the top 5. Fitting. Gengar's up next, and you definitely don't want to miss that one. Gengar, the most requested video by far, is here. We're rating them all, and Gengar is obviously incredible. 130 special attack and 110 in speed, with great utility and support with Confuse Ray and Hypnosis, strong stab, Shadow Balls, and Sludge Bombs, diverse type coverage with strong TMs like Psychic, Dazzling Gleam, and Thunderbolt, all of that at the insanely low level of 25, or even earlier. This is the easiest 5 stars in Battle Prowess since Alakazam, and speaking of that, availability. Yes, it's a trait evolution, and as I went over in depth in the Golem video, the system in place is that it'll get -1 star for that, not including other things that will bring it back up or down, like Alakazam being available before the second gym. And Gengar is actually available to catch in the wild in both Sinnoh and Alola. So with that, Gengar will get 4 stars for availability. Gengar, similarly to Ghastly and Haunter, is based off many spirits throughout folklore, some that spread disease, for its poison type, along with its name being based on Doppelganger, and that will play a huge role in its design. Once again, 5 stars. And as for its design, it's actually my least favorite in its evolution line, but that isn't saying much, because they're all amazing, including Gengar. It once again delivers on the concept perfectly as a mischievous spirit, along with the awesome link or even opposition to Clefable's design. Oh, and you know, being one of the most popular Pokemon of all time really doesn't hurt here. 5 stars. Which lands Gengar the final score of 4.75 stars, just below Alakazam in the top 5. Mega Gengar is up next as we rate them all. It's obviously incredible in battle with 170 special attack and 130 speed. It's an absolute monster. Gengar got 5 stars for its great utility, stats, strong stab moves, and TM coverage like Psychic and Dazzling Gleam, so when it Mega Evolves, it obviously just gets better. 5 stars for Battle Prowess. As for its availability, it starts off at Gengar's 4 stars, and its Mega Stone is available in the town of the 6th gym, which is pretty average for Mega Evolutions, which by the way, we're now rating Mega's availability compared to other Megas, so it'll stay 4 stars. But I am still open to some input on a lot of these Mega's specific scores, since they're kind of all over the place and hard to rate. This whole line is based off of an assortment of different spirits and creepy entities, which is awesome and has been 5 stars across the board so far. Then when Mega Gengar evolves, it now apparently is a trans-dimensional being who does what to anyone and everyone? Well, that's terrifying. 5 stars. Its design then I think portrays that really well. Its whole being is seemingly getting stretched through dimensions, topped with a third eye common with Oni legends. Mega Gengar is incredibly cool, and I'm really glad it finally got the shiny that Gengar deserved. 5 stars. So Mega Gengar's final score is the same as Gengar's, 4.75 stars. I'm sure most of you have seen plenty of videos trashing Onix for having less attack than most of the pipsqueaks in Pokemon, and I think that that's just totally valid. We're rating them all, and this isn't an original take by any means, but holy crap, Onix is bad. Other than bind shenanigans in the broken games that were Gen 1, I just don't see the use case for Onix. Yes, its defense is ridiculous, but its other stats are just so bad, not to mention the 2 quad weaknesses. It'll handle the early route bugs and birds for you, but that's about its best. And never forget...
What did I say, Brayden? What did I say? What did I say? I thought that's sturdy.
Sturdy doesn't work that way until Gen 5. 1.5 stars for Battle Prowess, and the only reason it isn't a 1 or a 0 is that defense stat. It's actually available really early in a lot of games, surprisingly. You can get it before the first gym in Johto, Sinnoh, Galar, then before the second gym in Kalos and Let's Go, but it isn't available until mid-game in the real Kanto, and not until Victory Road in Unova. So with a little bit of math, it'll average out to 4 stars. Its concept seems to be committing to the pun of earthworm and making it literal, which is actually pretty hilarious, and even without that, the idea of a giant rock snake is pretty cool. 3.5 stars. Its design, I might actually be alone on this one, but I think it's pretty good. This is an example of simplicity in design being underrated. It's a giant rock snake that looks intimidating and dangerous, like some final boss you'd reach at the end of a deep dungeon. It's pretty good. 3.5 stars. So Onix's final score is 3.125, and honestly, that's better than I was expecting. Drowsy used to actually be really strong. In Gen 1 proper, it just had the one special stat of 90, along with how broken sleep was, but in every generation after that, it's just not good. We're rating them all, and going from 90 to 43 in special attack is just disrespectful. Its moveset is pretty good, and thankfully it is available pretty early in the games where those stats aren't nearly as glaring and it can hold its own. 2.5 stars for Battle Prowess. And as I just said, it is available early, before the third gym in Kanto, the second in Johto, and before the first trial in Alola. So it'll average out to 4.5 stars. Drowsy is based on the Malaysian tapir with inspiration from the Japanese myth of the Baku, a creature who eats bad dreams, which is actually just directly referenced in Fire Red's Pokedex entry, which is kind of crazy, but still, it fits the perfect example of how Pokemon concept should be in my opinion. A normal animal, but with a fantastical trait or folklore reference. 5 stars. And I think that its design pulled off the concept really well. It's clearly a creepy little hypnotist tapir, but I do think that it's a little too plain. Its face and snout look really good, but then the rest of its body is just an undefined detailed blob dipped in chocolate. 3 stars. So Drowzee lands the final score of 3.75 stars. Hypno is so creepy, but it did actually used to be really good. In true Gen 1, it just had the one special stat of 115. It was basically the slower, bulkier Alakazam for people who didn't have friends to trade with. But just like Drowzee, they nerfed the crap out of it for every generation after that. It got the typical Gen 1 jack of all trades treatment and is just kind of mid across the board. It does have a solid moveset with some utility and setup moves. It can be somewhat good with just nasty plot and psychic. 3 stars. Its availability will stay the same as Drowzee at 4.5 since it evolves at a pretty normal level, along with its concept still being based on the Japanese Baku legend of a dream-eating creature, and maybe with some hints at goblins and or the boogeyman. 5 stars. Its design, however, seems to totally deviate from the tapir aspects of Drowzee, now leaning more towards something looking like a proboscis monkey and fully leaning into the really weird, creepy idea, while still just being generally boring. Not to mention some of the controversy surrounding this Pokemon and just being really creepy in general. I'm really just not a fan here. 2 stars. So Hypno's final score is 3.625 stars. Krabby's up next as we rate them all, and they just threw the whole jack of all trades thing right out the window for Krabby. 105 attack is crazy, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't realize it had 90 defense. That's pretty amazing, but 25 special defense, 30 HP, and not enough speed either? Oof. Before the physical special split, Krabby was just bad, and honestly, even after, it doesn't get any good physical water moves until well after it evolves. Thankfully, you don't have to stick with it for too long because it's pretty bad. 2 stars. Its availability is all over the place. It's locked behind the Super Rod and Gen 1, Old Rod in Gen 2, Good Rod in the Kanto remakes, and then after the 3rd gym in the Johto remakes and the other Kanto remakes, and before the 1st gym in Galar. So that'll average out to 4 stars. Oh, by the way, I don't count it against the Pokemon when they aren't available until the post-game in some regions unless it's their home region, because that's just ridiculous. I'm looking at you, Tyranitar. As for its concept, it's a crab. 1 star. The whole normal animal works for normal types excuse isn't gonna work for other types anymore. That was dumb to begin with. Its design, surprisingly, I actually like quite a bit, probably because of the anime, but it's a feisty little crab that's actually pretty cute, but it is still literally just a crab. 2.5 stars. So Krabby's final score is 2.375 stars, landing it in the bottom 5. Will Kingler get the justice it deserves after Krabby landed in the bottom 5? We're rating them all, and Kingler does have absurd attack and great defense, along with now having at least an okay amount of speed where it will at least outspeed a lot of the physical ground and rock types it will likely be facing. But it is still obviously really weak on the special side. It does still have a really poor level up moveset though. Before the physical special split, you may as well not even teach it a water move. Then between gens 4 and 7, it's gonna rely really heavily on late game Waterfall or Crab Hammer for a good stab move. But hey, at least they finally gave it Razor Shell in Gen 8. If you use it right, it can be a monster. But as a whole, its uses are pretty niche. 3 stars. Its availability is gonna stay the same as Krabby at 4 stars, and along with its concept, once again, crab. Big crab. 1 star. Its design, however, is a great example of the difference between concept and design. Like, yes, it is literally just a crab, but its design is somehow fantastic. The one dominant massive claw, the sharp lower jaw that looks like a confident little smirk, all topped off by the crown for Kingler. I think this is a really awesome design. 4 stars. So sorry, just Jaden, but its final score is 3 stars and definitely not in the top 5. Voltorb is going to be a difficult one as we rate them all. It's okay in battle, I suppose. 100 speed, 55 special attack, and it's not as squishy as I thought. Its moveset, though, is odd through the generations. No electric moves at all in Gen 1, but hey, it gets Spark in Gen 3, Charge Beam in Gen 4, and finally Electro Ball, the perfect move for this thing all the way in Gen 6. But no Thunder Wave to be found anywhere. So it doesn't get the typical utility of an electric type, and it doesn't have very good moves in most games, or enough special attack to really do a whole lot offensively. 2 stars. Then it's available after the 3rd gym in Kanto, the Hoenn remakes, and also in Johto with an in-game trade, then after the 5th gym in the OG Hoenn. So it'll average out to 3.25 actually, so the tie goes to the Speedster, 3.5 stars. Now Voltorb is obviously based on a Pokeball, but not just a Pokeball, an angry Pokeball. Now all jokes aside, apparently there are a whole bunch of different electrical references with Voltorb, with its shape, personality, explosive nature, all sorts of stuff surprisingly, so it'll get a pretty good 3.5 stars. Its design, however, it's literally just a Pokeball with eyes instead of a button. It obviously pulls off the whole mimicking a Pokeball to be an explosive trap thing really well, but I can't justify giving it higher than 2.5 stars. So Voltorb gets the final score of 2.875 stars. Electrode is up next as we rate them all, and its shining attribute is obviously speed. It was the fastest Pokemon in Gen 1 and is still up there for the fastest non-legend. But as we went over with Voltorb, its moveset is just bad in almost all of the generations, but at least you'll probably have Thunderbolt for Electrode, so it's far from useless, but it does lack T-Wave access like basically every other electric type. In reality, all Electrode is going to do is chuck out fast T-Bolts and Electro Balls. 3 stars. Its availability will stay the same as Voltorb since it evolves at a pretty reasonable level, 3.5 stars. And And Electrode is once again obviously based on a Pokeball, or more specifically a mimic-like creature masquerading as one so it can go boom. But it also has quite a few other connections to electricity, my favorite of which is the fact that Voltorb is the angry negative charge, and Electrode is the happy positive charge. That's pretty cool. 3.5 stars. It then portrays that concept really well. As I mentioned, the positive look on its face with the big smile is a really nice touch on Electrode that does give it a lot more personality than Voltorb. And it actually makes it look like a Pokemon and not just a Pokeball. 3 stars. Giving Electrode the final score of 3.25 stars. 50 more until Gen 2. Follow so you don't miss the next one. Execute is up next as we rate them all, and it's gonna be a weird one to rate for battle prowess. I'll admit I've never actually used it. I always immediately evolve it into Exeggutor, so let's see. Its stats are actually surprisingly good. 60 special attack and HP with 80 defense isn't bad at all, but its typing on the other hand, holy weaknesses. Its moveset though is actually pretty good. In the early game it's going to be a really solid support mon with Leech Seed, Reflect, Stun Spore, etc. It really doesn't have much offense at all though. In Gen 2 it gets Confusion at 19, but then in the remakes they pushed it all the way back to 27 for some reason, so that'll keep it at 2.5 stars. As for its availability, it's all over the place across the games. Mid-game in Kanto, pretty early in Johto with Headbutt, before the 4th gym in Kalos, and super late in both Alola and Let's Go. So that'll round out to 2.5 stars. Now as for its concept, well, it's clearly supposed to be either eggs or seeds, or maybe coconuts, maybe all of them at the same time. I think however you want to look at this, it's clearly a really weak concept. 1 star. Then its design, it's eggs. Sure, they all have their own faces, which is kind of cute. I like the one in the middle, but is that one okay? As a whole, like I said, it's kind of cute and is unique, I suppose. 2 stars. Landing Execute, 2 stars overall, and a spot in the bottom 5. How will Exeggutor fare after Execute landed in our bottom 5? We're rating them all, and it can actually be insanely strong in battle. 125 special attack, pretty solid bulk, and its ability Chlorophyll can easily make up for its lack of speed. Now you can't ignore its typing's amount of weaknesses, but if you get the Sun up, 125 special attack, 1 turn Solar Beams, and Psychics to follow it up, along with its utility with Leech Seed, Reflect, Giga Drain, etc., Exeggutor will surprise you with how strong it is in a normal playthrough. 4.5 stars. As for its availability, you're gonna have a Leaf Stone by the time you get Execute in most of the games other than Johto, where at least in the remakes they aren't hard to get at all, so it'll stay the same at 2.5 stars. Exeggutor is obviously based on a palm tree or coconut tree, but it does have some ties to folklore as well, with connections to this yokai, a tree that grows human heads, which is actually pretty interesting. 4 stars. As for its design, it obviously portrays that well, since it's literally a palm tree with human-esque faces on coconuts. I really don't know how I feel about this one. Like, it was clearly pretty well designed, but I've never liked it at all, so I'll land on 3.5 stars, giving Exeggutor the final score of 3.625, a massive boost from its evolution. Is Cubone the baby of a Charizard or a Kangaskhan? We're rating them all, and either way, it's not very good in battle. Items aren't taken into account in any of these ratings, otherwise you could argue Eviolite makes every unevolved Pokemon better. So hey, it has 95 defense, that's nice, but the rest of its stats are just bad. Bone Club and Bone Meringue are really solid stab ground moves though, so it'll get 2 stars for battle prowess. Then as for its availability, you can get it before the 4th gym in Kanto, before the 3rd gym in Crystal in the game corner, before the 2nd gym in Kalos, and on the 2nd island in Alola, so it'll average out to 4 stars. And Cubone has one of the most famous concepts of all time. You all know it as well as I do. It's an orphaned or abandoned little guy who wears the skull of its late mother, which is obviously incredibly sad, but is a great concept. 5 stars. Its design then portrays that concept so well. A sad or even angry little bipedal dinosaur guy, the skull helmet and bone club are just so iconic. Cubone is another great example of simplicity in design being underrated. 5 stars. So what do you think? Is it a baby Charmander, Kangaskhan, Marowak? Either way, its final score is an even 4 stars, which is way better than I was expecting honestly, but not quite top 5. Cubone's mother, or is it, is up next as we rate them all. And it's actually pretty good in battle, even without the Thick Club, since we don't count that here. Sure, it's slow, but 110 defense, 80 attack, and the kicker here is the 80 special defense. That's really unique for a Gen 1 ground type and is very useful. It's no powerhouse, but with Bone Meringue and Earthquake, it can get the job done. 3.5 stars for battle prowess. Its availability will be a 4, just like Cubone, but its concept, I think, is completely separate from Cubone's. I don't think that Marowak is actually part of Cubone's origin story at all, and by that I mean I don't think it's the mother. I think it's just the evolution, the result of that baby having to grow up on its own, and evolving into its own new type of creature, which is just an amazing concept. 5 stars. Then its design is the progression from Cubone. I think that it conveyed the harsh and lonely upbringing really well here, and now it clearly has a more hardened presence and attitude because of that. At first glance, Marowak's design isn't all that eye-catching, but it is done really well, but not quite as well as Cubone's 4.5 stars, landing Marowak with the final score of 4.25 stars and just missing out on the top 5. It only gained 75 special defense after Gen 1 apparently. We're rating them all, and that's just insane. From 35 to 110 is a massive swing, but did it actually make Hitmonlee any good in battle? Well, 110 attack and 87 speed is actually pretty amazing, but having 50s in defense and HP is not good at all. That special defense is cool, but most good matchups for fighting types are against physical attackers, and I might be a little low on this one, but I think it's only 3 stars for battle prowess. And its availability is also kind of confusing. You get it in Saffron and Kanto obviously, and you can get it at level 20 by evolving a Tyrogue in the other regions, but you can't get Tyrogue until after the 7th gym in Johto, but actually right at the start of the wild area in Galar, so it'll average out to 3 stars. Then Hitmonlee's name is obviously based on Bruce Lee, but the Pokemon as a whole seems to be based on these headless men from various cultures' mythologies, and I can see it for sure, but it's not all that interesting. 3 stars. And I have to admit, I'm just really not a fan of its design. Yes, there's a lot of nostalgia behind it, especially from the anime, and it does portray its concept pretty well, but something about it is just unappealing. 2.5 stars, so it'll average out to 2.875 stars overall. Will Hitmonchan outscore Hitmonlee? We're rating them all, and it's definitely much better in battle. Its stats as a whole make way more sense. 105 attack, 110 in special defense, and then pretty decent defenses and speed. Oh, and you know its ability Iron Fist post Gen 3, which is really when Hitmonchan takes off anyway, since the physical special split makes the elemental punches that it learns so much better. It gets all the coverage you need, priority, and strong stab moves. It's actually incredible, but as I said, it was quite a bit worse in the first 3 generations, so I can't justify giving it over 4 stars, but I strongly considered 4.5. We went over its availability in Hitmonlee's video, and it's obviously going to be the same there, so 3 stars. Hitmonchan is the Jackie Chan to Hitmonlee's Bruce Lee, of course, but where Hitmonlee gets a loose mythological base, Hitmonchan is literally just a boxer. It's a dude. This is just a dude. 1 star. And I might get some flack for this one, but in spite of the awful concept, I think Hitmonchan looks so much better than Hitmonlee. I generally can't stand humanoid Pokemon, especially those who use objects or clothes, and Hitmonchan has both. So as much as I want to give it a higher score, I know this one's just nostalgia. I can't. 2 stars for design. Giving Hitmonchan the final score of 2.5 stars. Lickitung. Oh god, just why? We're rating them all, and Lickitung is actually just garbage in battle. Its stats across the board are underwhelming, with awful speed, poor attack, and mild bulk. So what are you even gonna do with this thing? It has a surprisingly limited move pool with nothing great to mention other than knockoff. And okay, yes, it has some really good TM options, but even with Earthquake, T-Bolt, and Ice Beam, Lickitung isn't actually gonna do anything. 1 star in battle prowess. And it's not even that available either. You can't get it in Kanto at all actually, other than an in-game trade with a Slowbro, which you won't even realistically have at that point in the game. Then it's locked behind 7 badges in Johto, actually only 3 in Sinnoh, and then not until Victory Road in Kalos and Alola, basically. So that'll average it out to 2 stars. And why is such a bad Pokemon such a late game encounter? Its concept is shockingly cool, actually. It seems to be based on chameleons or other reptiles with projectile tongues, but drawing its main inspiration from the yokai Ekaname, which is disgusting, but if you read it, it's actually really interesting and a unique concept for Pokemon. 5 stars. However, its design is arguably one of the most off-putting Pokemon of all time. Yes, it fulfills the concept well, and that's the only reason it isn't getting a 1 here. 2 stars, giving Lickitung the final score of 2.5 stars, and I can't believe it isn't in the bottom 5. Coughing has always been oddly charming, so let's see how it does as we rate them all. Its stats are, well, odd. It's slow, kind of bulky, but kind of not. It has okay attack, but is really handcuffed by its move pool. Sludge and Self-Destruct being the only moves even really worth mentioning, other than Gyro Ball post Gen 4. It does only have 1 weakness with Levitate though, so it'll get 2.5 stars for battle prowess. Then it isn't available in Kanto until after you get Surf, then before the 4th gym in Johto and Hoenn, and actually before the 2nd gym in Unova, and then in the second half of the wild area in Galar, so we'll just say post Gym 3 for a realistic playthrough. So that averages out to 3.5 stars. Coughing's concept is obviously similar to Grimer's, based on the fear of overpollution leading to the creation of new undesirable life forms, so it'll get 3.5 stars, and I'm upping Grimer and Mux too because I think I was too low there. Coughing's design then I think does a really good job of portraying that concept. Poisonous and polluted gases literally embodied, along with the skull and crossbones symbolizing its its poisonous nature, and a happy little goofy smile to top it all off. Honestly, it's a pretty underrated design. 3.5 stars, but I'm on the fence with this one. So Koffing's final score comes out to 3.25 stars. Do you prefer Weezing, Muck, or Garbodor? We're rating them all, and Weezing is surprisingly good in battle. 120 defense and about 90 in both attacks, which means its Sludge Bombs will hit fairly hard both pre and post physical special split. It does also get a surprising amount of coverage with strong TMs like Shadow Ball, Flamethrower, and T-Bolt, not to mention Toxic and Venoshock shenanigans. It's never going to be the strongest member on your team, but it is definitely serviceable and it has its uses. 3.5 stars. Its availability starts out at 3.5 from Koffing, but it doesn't evolve until 35, which is like right on the cusp of whether or not it should be penalized for a late evolution. And I think since in most games you would use it in, other than Kanto, you would catch it at around level 15, so having to grind a Koffing for 20 levels is gonna dock it half a star, down to 3 stars. Its concept is once again based on the fear of overpollution leading to the creation of new and undesirable life forms, which is pretty cool for sure, 3.5 stars. But I think its design is actually really solid, especially as the evolution of Koffing, growing a second head from a genetic mutation due to the radiated pollutants in its body, with its now seemingly miserable look instead of Koffing's smile. Similarly to Koffing, I think Weezing's design is super underrated, 4 stars, bringing Weezing to the final score of 3.5 stars. Rhyhorn and its evolutions are still to this day the only ground rock type Pokemon in that order. We're rating them all. Rhyhorn actually has identical stats to Geodude other than, well, twice its HP. Its moveset isn't all that diverse, but it doesn't really need to be. Rock Blast and EQ in the early generations, Bulldoze, Drill Run, and Stone Edge in the later ones, it's really solid. But it does have the 2 really unfortunate quad weaknesses and a really late evolution, so you'll have to deal with Rhyhorn for quite a while, and for that reason specifically, it'll get a lower score than Geodude in Battle Prowess, 3 stars. We actually came up with a new system for availability that will be used from now on, and we'll go back and do a massive update video at the end of the generation for the availability scores. But yeah, so Rhyhorn's is all over the place, but it averages out to 3.5 stars. Rhyhorn's concept, however, is very simple. It's a Rhino mixed with a Ceratops type of dino, but now you make its armor actual rock. That's pretty cool, and it makes perfect sense. 3.5 stars. Oh boy, another mid across the board rating. You guys are gonna tell me I'm boring. But don't worry, I think its design is actually incredible. So good that I actually think it's the best in its line. The way the rock armor overlaps, the Ceratops style faceplate, Rhyhorn is such an awesome and underrated Pokemon. 4.5 stars, which gives Rhyhorn the final score of 3.625 stars. Rhydon is the first and the original Pokemon, and it's up next as we rate them all. It's surprisingly amazing in battle. Sure, it has the 2 quad weaknesses and garbage speed and special defense, but similarly to Golem, if you just aren't dumb about what you send it in on, Rhydon can be an absolute tank. 105 HP, 130 attack, 120 defense, an absolute physical monster with Earthquake, Stone Edge, Mega Horn, and actually some really nice coverage with Elemental Fangs and punches, 4.5 stars in battle prowess. As for its availability, it starts at Rhyhorn's 3.5, but having to wait 20 or so levels to evolve Rhyhorn is gonna drop it down to 3 stars. Rhydon's concept is super simple. It's a Rhino, Dino, Drill, Kaiju. It doesn't have to be super intricate to be awesome. Kaiju Pokemon are cool, 4 stars. As for its design, I personally prefer Rhyhorn, but you can't deny how iconic and amazing Rhydon's design is. It's the original Pokemon. So many others clearly draw inspiration from it, and I mean, come on, it's awesome. 5 stars. Which means Rhydon just misses the top 5 with 4.125 stars. How the heck am I supposed to handle Chansey as we rate them all? Well, I did a poll to help out since it really depends on what you value. It's one of the best stall mons ever, but that's literally all it does, and it's otherwise useless. So sure, it can be really good, but this comment here made a really good point. Stalling is great and competitive and in Nuzlocke, but in a normal playthrough, it's pretty pointless. So with that in mind, but not forgetting the potential for toxic stalls, it'll get 2 stars. And it's actually way more available than I thought, mid-game in Kanto and Alola, than actually really early on in Sinnoh and Let's Go. So thanks to our new system here, it'll average out to 4 stars. Chansey is based on, well, an egg, I suppose. No, but for real, it's obviously supposed to be the typical RPG healer, with its happy demeanor, replenishing eggs, and its general nurturing and healing nature. Every RPG needs a healer, it's a cliche concept for a reason, because it's really good. 5 stars. Its design then actually kinda nails it. You don't need to know anything about Chansey or its use in game to know that it's supposed to be a super thick healer. I love the egg giving eggs thing, that's super unique, and its little face and smile is so cute. 5 stars. Whoever complained that my bottom 5 was full of all the pink Pokemon, here you go. Chansey's final score is 4 stars, closer to the top 5 than the bottom. Tangela was my guess at the start of all this for being the worst overall Kanto Pokemon. We're rating them all, so let's see. And well, I'll admit I wasn't expecting over 100 in defense and special attack, which in Gen 1 doubles the special defense too. Wow. Okay, how about its move pool? Well, it gets the status powders, which is nice, but doesn't actually get Giga Drain or Leech Seed by level up in most games, and its other attacks are pretty mid. Granted, it does have Chlorophyll, so some Solar Beam strats are definitely there, but we do have to mention the games where you can't evolve it into Tangrowth, and it's really just not gonna do well in the late game. I'll admit I've never actually used one, but to me it seems like 3 stars. I could see 3.5. Its availability is pretty straightforward. It's a mid-game encounter in Kanto and Sinnoh, and then a late-game encounter in Johto. So thanks to our new system, 2.5. Okay, there's no way its concept is good, right? You're kidding. It's based on a swamp monster made of tangled vines, a tangleweed plant, and Medusa. Its beta name was just Medusa. I can't believe it either, but that's a 5-star concept. Okay, but its design is one of the least interesting of Gen 1. I suppose it does an okay job portraying the concept. It looks more like a swamp goofy guy than a swamp monster, and it totally abandons the Medusa thing other than noodle hair. So yeah, it's a pretty awful design in my opinion, but it does get the point across, I suppose. 2 stars. So Tangela's final score is much higher than I thought at 3.125. Kangaskhan is for sure the most interesting normal type in Kanto, but how will it do as you rate them all? Its stats are surprisingly solid across the board. Bulky, much faster than I thought, and can hit pretty hard. Its move pool isn't bad at all either. Dizzy Punch, Fake Out, Sucker Punch, along with plenty of strong TM options like Return, EQ, Brick Break, Rock Slide. It's honestly a lot better than I thought. 4 stars for Battle Prowess. It's also more available than I thought. You can get it pre-5th gym in Kanto in the Safari Zone, then it isn't actually in any game before post-game until Kalos, where it's available before the 2nd gym, then on the 2nd island in Alola, so it'll average out to 4 stars. As for its concept, it's based off a kangaroo kaiju wearing Mongolian armor. That's really cool. 4 stars. Its design is obviously incredibly iconic, especially for a Pokemon that doesn't seem to actually get used all that often for some reason. You guys know I'm a sucker for kaiju Pokemon, and that touch of Protective Mother just gives it so much more character and personality. I really like Kangaskhan's design. 4 stars. Wait, is that the first time anything has gotten the same score all the way across the board? It only took 115 Pokemon, but anyway, Kangaskhan's final score is 4 stars. Mega Kangaskhan is actually one of my least favorite Megas, but let's see how it does as we rate them all. First off, holy crap, look at those stats. This thing is an absolute monster. Oh, and you know, arguably the most broken ability in Pokemon. Kangaskhan got 4 stars in Battle Prowess, and with that plus the obvious and huge improvement, there's no reason the Mega shouldn't get 5 stars here. The issue with Mega Kangaskhan's availability is the fact that it isn't available at all in X and Y until post-game, but it's available in ORAS pretty early, but you can't even get Kangaskhan in ORAS, so it's just not available, other than through a 2015 online event, which obviously you can't do anymore, so I don't know how that isn't 0 stars. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, I'm really not a fan of this Mega, but I do have to admit that the concept of the baby getting the Mega Evolution and not the actual Kangaskhan is really interesting and creative. 5 stars. Its design, however, is why I'm not really a fan. The baby getting more detailed and lively really doesn't do much to portray the fact that it got a Mega Evolution to me. Then Kangaskhan just stays the same. I don't know, like I said, it's a really cool idea, but I just don't think it was done all that well. I just like my Megas to be, well, mega looking. 3 stars. But even with that, Mega Kangaskhan still gets a pretty decent score of 3.25 stars. Horsea is one of the cutest Pokemon from Kanto. We're rating them all, and it's also one of those Pokemon that got totally screwed stat-wise after Gen 1. It had 70 defense and 70 special, along with its 60 speed. That's really nice for a first stage Pokemon. But then they dropped its special defense to 25? Why? That's just insane. That's Caterpie levels of bad. Its moveset is okay. It's basically just Twister and Bubble Beam. Maybe Surf, which is fine. But with that, plus the fact that you usually won't be using it until mid-game where everything else is so much stronger, tell me if I'm missing something here, but I don't know how that's anything over 2 stars in Battle Prowess. Then it's locked behind the Super Rod in Kanto and the Good Rod in Johto, which are both behind the 4th gym, then after the 6th gym in Hoenn and Unova, and the 3rd gym in Kalos, which averages out to 3 stars. Its concept, though, I hate to do it to the little guy, but it's literally just a seahorse. Or is it? Well, its species is the dragon Pokemon, and it is linked with the Japanese translation being an illegitimate child of a dragon. And knowing its final evolution, it makes it a whole lot cooler as a baby seahorse dragon-ish. 2.5 stars. Its design, however, I think is actually amazing. One of the very few Pokemon that I think looks better in 3D. But the little wing fins and the stereotypical dragon belly, I think do a wonderful job of making it convincingly kind of a dragon-esque thing while also still being adorable. 4 stars. Sadly giving Seahorse the final score of 2.875. Seadra is the forgotten middle child of this amazing evolution line. We're rating them all, and it's actually pretty solid in battle. If you look at these stats through the lens of it being a middle evolution, they look a lot better. 95 defense is shocking and really solid, along with with good special attack and speed. This is one of the very few Pokemon that I can actually judge more or less just on one region, since in Gen 2 onward, if you're going to use this line, you're immediately evolving it into Kingdra. So in true Gen 1, Seadra was a lot better actually, with just the one special stat of 95, meaning it was strong, bulky, and fast across the board. Then all you really need is Surf and Ice Beam, and it's actually really good. Sadly, we can't entirely ignore the fact that it will still be used post Gen 1, where it's definitely worse besides Sniper, so it'll come out to 3.5 stars. Its availability will be 3 stars, just like Horsea, and its concept seems to kind of drop the whole baby dragon idea and focus more on spiny sea creatures like the lionfish or the spiny seahorse, 2 stars. Its design is still really cool, obviously not as cute as Horsea, but also not as regal or almost intimidating like Kingdra, despite its clear attempt to be. I like Seadra a lot, but I feel like its attempt to be more of a spiny thing, even with the poison point ability, is a little lost in this line, 2.5 stars, bringing Seadra to the final score of 2.75 stars. Will Goldeen get the worst score yet? We're rating them all, and it's definitely not very good in battle. It doesn't even learn a water move by level up before it evolves until Gen 4, and even that is just the special water pulse, which isn't going to do anything coming from its 35 special attack. Sure, its attack, defense, and speed are decent, I suppose, but with its lack of really any meaningful moves, it's going to get 1.5 stars for battle prowess. The earliest you can get it per game is the Good Rod in Kanto and Sinnoh, the Old Rod in Johto and Hoenn, after the second trial in Alola, then locked behind Surf in Let's Go, but then pretty much immediately in the wild area in Galar, so that averages out to a whopping 4.5 stars. Then its concept, I mean, it's a goldfish, come on. But wait, it's not just a goldfish, it's a pretty fancy goldfish. No, 1 star. And as for its design, well, it's a pretty goldfish, koi, whatever, and they gave it a horn and tried to make it seductive with the eyes, the lips, and don't get me started on the anime voice. 1 star, which leaves Goldeen with an awful 2 stars overall and in the bottom 5, but still not as bad as Seal. Will Seaking escape the bottom 5? That's surprisingly full of water types. We're rating them all, and let's see how it'll do. It does have 92 attack, that's pretty good, and it's kinda bulky. The only move even really worth mentioning that it learns in any generation is Waterfall, and that's pretty much all it's got. It's a one-trick pony, and the trick isn't very impressive. I'm just not sure why anyone would ever choose to use a Seaking. 1.5 stars for battle prowess. Its availability will start at Goldeen, surprisingly high 4.5 stars, which you can actually get really early in most generations, but with that being said, have fun grinding up your garbage Goldeen all the way to level 33 to get yourself a Seaking. That'll bring it down to 4 stars. And as for its concept, once again, it's a goldfish. Sure, it's a cool looking goldfish with a horn, but it's a goldfish. 1 star. And I hate to break it to you, Seaking, but your design is even less interesting than Goldeen's. At least they were creative and really weird, with Goldeen trying to make it somewhat seductive, but you're literally just a fish with a horn. 0.5 stars. Landing Seaking the lowest score yet of 1.75 stars, firmly at the bottom of the list, and freeing Krabby and Psyduck from the bottom 5. Staryu is definitely the best fishing encounter in Kanto. We're rating them all, and it is, however, tough to rate in battle prowess because most of the time you'll never actually use it. You should have a water stone by the time you fish one up and immediately evolve it into Starmie, not even having to worry about level up moves because of its amazing TM usage. But I guess you could consider those same TMs for Staryu if you don't or can't evolve it, looking at you, Johto, and in that case, it's still pretty solid with 70 attack and 85 speed, so 3.5 stars. Its availability is just all over the place and would take so long to explain, so in short, it ends up averaging out to 3.5 stars. Staryu's concept is actually pretty interesting. Other than it clearly being based on a starfish, it's also pretty clearly supposed to be an enigmatic or even extraterrestrial creature. With the illuminating gem and ornate decoration, making a starfish into a punny star or meteor-like being is really creative. 4 stars. And its design I think does a pretty good job of portraying that as well. It's clearly a starfish, yet almost an object Pokemon, and simultaneously almost an alien Pokemon. I was on the fence here, so I ran a poll, and I actually completely agree with the majority here that it's a 3 borderline 4-star design, so I'll go with 3.5 stars, bringing Staryu to a respectable 3.625 stars. Starmie is arguably the best Elite Four sweeper in the first handful of generations. We're rating them all, and its stats are really great across the board. 100 special attack, 115 speed, and even 85 in both defenses. Then its water psychic typing is incredible offensively with Surf and Psychic, along with its insane TM capabilities with moves like Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, Dazzling Gleam, Flash Cannon, Grass Knot, etc, etc, etc. It's unbelievably diverse, it's fast, it's strong. Starmie is an easy 5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability will stay the same as Staryu's, being available at different times across pretty much every game and being super complicated, but averaging out to 3.5 stars. Along with its concept still being the mysterious, almost almost alien or futuristic take on a starfish, with ornate jewelry and that enigmatic nature, 4 stars. Its design is obviously super similar to Staryu's, yet for some reason it has always looked so much better. The purple does a lot to help it stand out, along with the extra arms and the more intricate gem. I also did a poll for this one, and I'm planning on doing it for as many of them as I can in the future, and I once again agree with the majority here, 4 stars in design, giving Starmie the final score of 4.125, leaving it just out of the top 5. Mr. Mime is just abhorrent, but it is shockingly good in battle. We're rating them all, and look at these stats: 100 special attack, 120 special defense, and 90 speed, not to mention just being a Gen 1 psychic type, which is broken in and of itself, but it just keeps getting better throughout the generations. It actually gained 20 special defense in Gen 2, then it gets the incredible filter ability in Gen 4, and finally it gets the best type in the game, Fairy, in Gen 6. It can set up screens, outspeed and hit like a truck, it gets all sorts of coverage TMs. Am I crazy for giving this thing 5 stars in battle prowess? It's actually available shockingly early in every game that it's in. It ends up averaging out to 4.5 stars. Then it's obviously based on a pantomime mixed with a clown, with the whole being trapped in invisible boxes thing, which I hate to admit is actually a pretty great idea for a psychic type Pokemon whose whole thing is to set up screens, 4 stars. Its design is probably going to be controversial here. According to the community polls, you guys clearly think this is a 3-star design, and I guess it does portray the concept really well actually, with the almost dunce cap style ears, the gesture-like shoes, and the clown makeup. But god, I can't be the only one who just can't stand this thing, can I? I think it's one of the worst looking Pokemon of all time. Before the poll, I was 100% gonna give it 1 star. But I hear your point, and I'll settle on 2 stars, bringing Ash's dad to the final score of 3.875 stars. Scyther's the reason the bug type is my favorite type in Pokemon still to this day, so let's see how it does as we rate them all. It's really solid in battle. 110 attack, 105 speed, and 80s in defense is actually really nice, but its typing is obviously pretty bad, especially in the early gens before the bug type really got any moves. Thankfully, Scyther still gets by just fine thanks to Gen 1 Slash Cheese, and after that, its ability Technician, powering up moves like Wing Attack and Fury Cutter, made even stronger with Swords Dance by level up. So it will do pretty nicely until later gens where it learns even better moves, and I really wanted to give it 5 stars here, but I feel like 4 is more accurate. Its failability ranges pretty drastically between the games, and we can't forget that it's a version exclusive in quite a few of them, so that'll average out to 3 stars. Its concept, however, is all over the place, yet it's awesome. It takes inspiration from a praying mantis, obviously, but also this scythe lizard dinosaur, as well as an insect like yokai, 5 stars. Then its design takes all of those different concepts and turns it into what I think is one of the coolest Pokemon of all time. The obvious iconic sword arms with the reptilian, almost kaiju-esque face and feet, yet thanks to its segmentation and wings, it's still clearly a bug. This is peak Pokemon design if you ask me. And I did ask you guys, and you agreed that this is an easy 5 stars, landing Scyther the final score of 4.25 stars, just out of the top 5. Jinx is just as horrid as it is controversial, but we're rating them all, so let's see how she'll actually do. It is actually really good in battle, with 115 special attack, 95 special defense, and speed. Gen 1 psychic types were just broken across the board. Adding the ice type does give it a lot offensively, but makes it worse defensively where it already struggles. Obviously it can hit like a truck, and it gets some decent coverage with utility though, so 4 stars. Oh, and I think I was a little too high on Mr. Mime's BP2, so I'm bringing it back down to 4.5. Also similarly to Mr. Mime, the only way to get it in Kanto is through an in-game trade. Then it's a really late game encounter in every other region other than Alola, so it'll average out to 3 stars. Jinx's concept is all over the place, taking inspiration from this super niche fashion trend in Japan in the early 90s, then a whole lot of controversy over obvious reasons, as well as a few pretty loose connections to folklore, other than this very specific one that fits pretty well. But as a whole, I can't give this creepy human-shaped Pokemon more than 2 stars for concept. And for design, you guys' votes were shockingly all over the place, but leaning pretty heavily down towards 1 star. So with this obvious controversy, while also just being one of the worst designs in Pokemon history, Jinx will get the first ever 0 star in design, but it won't be the last, landing Jinx 2.25 stars and a spot in the bottom 5. Electabuzz is actually my favorite Gen 1 electric type. Let's see how it does as we rate them all. It's almost identical to Raichu stat-wise, and they obviously learn similar moves like T-Wave, T-Bolt, and Volt Switch, so we can more or less just copy and paste for battle prowess here. But I do think that Electabuzz does get some better coverage moves, so we'll get 4 stars for battle prowess. Now it is a version exclusive in the 2D games, but not available until after the 5th gym in Kanto. Technically you can get elected before the 2nd gym in Unova, but it doesn't evolve until level 30, and that's just about the level of the 4th gym, and then around the 6th trial in Alola, which averages out to 3 stars. It's then based pretty clearly on the Japanese Oni, a horned ogre that wears tiger skin skin and has lightning powers. This is literally just Raijin, and that's incredibly cool. 5 stars. And as I said at the start, it's my favorite General Electric type, but apparently you guys think it looks amazing too, riding the line between 4 and 5 stars. So I'm totally fine with giving it 4.5 stars for design. And as we're nearing the end of Gen 1, I do want to say that I am going to be taking a week or two break in between generations, but during that time I am going to be streaming some like nostalgia runs of Gen 2 just as a nice refresher course before we get there, giving Electabuzz the final score of 4.125 stars. Magmar's up next as we rate them all, and it's actually a lot faster than I remembered. Its stats are actually really solid other than defense and HP. Its move pool is basically the same as Ninetales, with key moves like Flamethrower and Confuse Ray, along with some really nice TM coverage, but it's just a bit more offensive and squishier, so it'll get the same 4 stars in battle prowess. As for availability, it is a version exclusive in the early gens, but available post-Surf in Gen 1, then actually before the 4th gym in Johto, not until after the 7th gym in Leaf Green, and after the 6th in Plat, then around the 4th in Unova, and before the 3rd trial in Alola, so that averages out to 3 stars. Magmar seems to be based on a booby or a duck, with some inspiration from this Japanese legend of a bird-like fire-breathing creature, and that's really cool. 5 stars. Then its design I wasn't actually too high on. A fire duck is really cool, and I like it as a whole, but I've just never been a huge fan of it personally. I was leaning in the 3 to 4 star range, but this is where it gets interesting. On one platform, the votes are leaning towards about 4.5 stars, and on the other, 3 stars is the heavy favorite. So I think with that, I'll settle on 4 stars for design, which gives Magmar the solid final score of 4 stars. Should I do Crystal or Heart Gold for our first stream in between generations? Is Pinsir or Scyther the better Gen 1 bug? We're rating them all, and Pinsir's stats are for sure better, with 125 attack, 100 defense, and even respectable special defense and speed. Pure bug typing is also just better than bug flying, but Pinsir's level up moveset is even more ridiculous than Scyther's. Its only real attacking move in Gen 1 was Vice Grip until Slash all the way at level 49. Even in Gen 3, it gets a few good fighting moves, but no bug to be seen. Then it finally gets X-Scissor in Gen 4 at actually a pretty reasonable level 30. I feel like they actually kind of end up right at the same spot at 4 stars. Its availability is similar to Scyther, with the version exclusivity and mid-game in most regions, but it is really early in others, so it'll average out to 3.5 stars. Pinsir is, however, very clearly based on a stag beetle, or maybe a scarab, which to be fair, insect fighting in Japan was the whole basis for the idea of the Pokemon franchise, and I feel like Pinsir is a direct result of that, so normally I would give it 2 stars for being literally just a bug, but with that, I think that deserves a bump up to 3 stars. As for its design, I've always loved it, with bug being my favorite type, but I thought that it was always overshadowed by Scyther, so I was honestly thinking like 3 stars here, but the votes were surprisingly high on this one, about 4.5 stars on one platform and 4 on the other, so we'll give Pinsir 4 stars for design, landing at the final score of 3.625 stars. And answering the question, Mega Pinsir I think is the perfect example of the divide in the opinion of Mega Evolutions as a whole. We're rating them all, and at least in battle prowess, this isn't difficult at all. Sure, getting the flying type might actually hurt it a little bit, but with 155 attack, 120 defense, and 105 speed, does it really matter? Oh wait, it has Aerialate? I'll admit, I didn't even know that. That's actually insane and clearly deserves 5 stars in battle prowess. As for availability, its Megastone isn't available in Oras until after the 7th gym, which is a little late for a Mega Evolution, so that will bring its score down to 3 stars. And as we've said before, concept is a bit blurry with Megas, as they're mostly just the same, so all we can really take away is that they made said fighting beetle into a flying fighting beetle, which is fine as a concept, so it'll stay 3 stars. And its design takes Pinsir, who was already a fairly scary looking or intimidating beetle, and turns it into a full-blown flying terror of a bug. One of the more, I don't know, ferocious designs in Pokemon, and that's really cool. But it seems to be just a step away from the idea of Pokemon, so I was leaning towards 2.5 stars or so, but the polls actually skewed really heavily towards 4 stars on one and even 5 stars on the other. So Mega Pinsir will get 3.5 stars for design, landing at the same final score as Pinsir actually, 3.625 stars. Tauros is arguably the strongest Pokemon in a true Gen 1 playthrough, but will it crack the top 5 as we rate them all? At least in terms of battle prowess, it's obviously a beast. We all know it crushes in Gen 1, but does it stay that good throughout the generations? I don't think so. Yes, it does get Intimidate, which is amazing, and its stats are incredible with right around 100 in attack, defense, and speed. And its move pool does get better as the games go on, with Zen Headbutt, Earthquake, Return, etc. And I know everything I'm talking about is pointing towards 5 stars, but I just don't think it's quite in that upper echelon outside of Gen 1, 4.5 stars. It's actually available right before or around the 4th gym, or even earlier in most regions, so it'll get a surprisingly high 4 stars. Its concept though is pretty obviously just a bull or bison with a whip-style tail. Now normal Pokemon looking like normal animals is fine, it makes sense, but that's just the 2-star concept. Its design, however, I think is pretty great. It's simple yet powerful. I like the metal-looking horns a lot, then the whip tail looks good and separates it from just being a normal animal. The polls both came out to about 3 or 4 stars, and I agree here, 3.5 stars, giving Tauros the final score of 3.5 stars. Magikarp has finally arrived, and it's going to be really difficult to judge as we rate them all. Well, other than its battle prowess, that's obviously a 0. It's one of, if not the weakest and most useless Pokemon ever. And well, actually neither will its availability, since that's obviously a 5. It's available super early everywhere. The latest that you can get it is in Alola, where it's still available before the second trial, not including Hala. Literally 5 stars in every region. Now where it actually gets interesting is its concept, which is up there with Cubone for being one of the most well-known and loved in the series, being based on the legendary carp that can climb up and leap over the waterfall or Dragon Gate, which then would become a powerful dragon. Once again, easily 5 stars. But I wasn't totally lying to you in the intro, it is really tough to judge in terms of its design. On one hand, it's literally just a fish, and an ugly one at that. But on the other hand, that's the whole idea of the design. It's supposed to be this unassuming, unimpressive carp with small hints at greatness, with the large crest-like dorsal fin and the long whiskers. I was really torn on this one. I even skewed the poll towards the lower numbers because I incorrectly assumed that it would poll poorly. But 4 to 5 stars clearly won on both platforms. Though, side note, if you haven't seen the theory of Gyarados and Dragonite being switched in their lines, you need to. But anyway, Magikarp clearly crushes its purpose with its design, but I can't quite put it in the peak Pokemon design conversation. It's just really good. 4 stars. And with that, Magikarp gets the final score of 3.5 stars, and you don't want to miss Gyarados. Make sure you're following. Will Gyarados be the first perfect 5-star Pokemon? A lot of you seem to think so. We're rating them all, and let's see. Gyarados is arguably the strongest and most consistently amazing Pokemon across every single generation. I really don't think I need to explain why. Everybody is aware of how good Gyarados is, so let me answer the common why it shouldn't be comments. But wait, what about its 4 times weakness? Well, first of all, it's only one of 2 weaknesses that it has. Secondly, just don't send it in on electric. Shocking, I know. And finally, even if you do, it's bulky enough to probably take 1 hit, then just destroy it with an earthquake. 5 stars, and it's ridiculous to suggest otherwise. Then its availability is another one that people questioned originally. The argument is that you have to grind Magikarp to level 20, which kind of sucks, sure. But in most games, you can just use an XP share and set it and forget it until you get the gift that is Gyarados. And in the others, even if switch training kind of sucks, at the end of that, you get one of the strongest Pokemon in the game before the second gym. That's insane, and there's a reason every Nuzlocke bans this thing. Another 5 stars. Its concept of the carp jumping over the Dragon Gate and turning into a dragon is one of the most well-known and popular ever. 5 stars. Then its design, I mean, come on guys, this is one of the most iconic and popular Pokemon of all time. For sure, one of the coolest Pokemon ever. But I humored the haters and I ran a poll. And Gyarados ran away with it in a Dragon Rage and took 5 stars easily. Meaning Gyarados is the first perfect 5-star Pokemon overall, claiming its throne at the top. It is without equal. Will Gyarados' Mega Evolution match its perfect performance? We're rating them all, and in terms of battle prowess, I do think changing its flying type to Dark is actually a net negative, but with its 155 attack, 130 special defense, and solid HP and defense, it really doesn't matter. Gyarados got 5 stars in battle prowess, so its Mega obviously will too. And as for its availability, you can get it on Route 123 in Oras pretty much the same time you get most other Megas, so it'll stay 5 stars. And as we've discussed before, concept is a blurry one to judge from Megas, since they're pretty much the exact same as the original Pokemon, and that's no different here with Gyarados, except it might even have some extra folklore ties on top of it, so it'll stay 5 stars. It all comes down to design. Will we get our second perfect 5-star Pokemon? Find out next time. I'm just kidding. But I will admit that I do think Mega Gyarados is a direct downgrade in terms of design. Like, yes, obviously it's still incredibly cool, monstrous, atrocious, whatever you want to call it, but I think that the bulkier, almost shrimp-shaped body is just a little weird, and I wasn't alone on this one. The polls went clearly in the way of 5 stars on one platform, but 4 on the other, along with a number of comments and messages echoing my thoughts on it. So Mega Gyarados will end up getting 4.5 stars in design, meaning its final score is 4.875, and it's tied for the best Mega alongside Alakazam. Lapras has always seemed like a legendary Pokemon to me. I'm not sure why, but we're rating them all, and Lapras is really solid in battle, with 130 HP, 95 special defense, and basically 80 in everything else. It's no offensive powerhouse, but Water Ice is a really useful offensive typing into the late game with moves like Surf, Ice Beam, and Ice Shard, along with its other really nice moves like Confuse Ray, Body Slam, and Parashong. It's never gonna wow you, but it's always gonna be really good. 4 stars. It's available surprisingly early. You get it handed to you as a gift in both Kanto and Kalos, then you can get it as soon as you get Surf and Johto. Then it's actually locked behind the postgame in every region other than Galar, where it isn't available until the 7th gym, so it'll average out to 3.5 stars. Lapras is then obviously based on the Loch Ness Monster, while also taking inspiration from plesiosaurs as well as other marine mammals. 4 stars. Its design, however, I think is fantastic. It's majestic, adorable, yet has that air of mystery to it, which I think portrays its concept perfectly. And it seems that you guys agree, since 5 stars won in a landslide in both polls. 5 stars, bringing Lapras the final score of 4.125 stars, leaving it just outside the top 5. Make sure you're following because the evolutions are coming up soon. Ditto is gonna be confusing, so bear with me on this one. We're rating them all, and its gimmick in battle is obviously that it can transform into its its opponent, so it theoretically could be a 5 in battle prowess, but it could also be a 0, so then I would just settle on 2.5 stars. But the only thing that makes it even somewhat good is its hidden ability Imposter, and we haven't counted hidden abilities for any Pokemon yet. I'll give it 2 stars in battle prowess, but I'm definitely open to input on this one since I've admittedly never used it. Its availability ranges pretty heavily throughout the regions, from early game in Johto all the way to end game in Kalos, but it'll average out to 3 stars. As for its concept, I could have sworn Ditto was the result of a failed experiment trying to recreate Mew just like Mewtwo, but apparently I just made all that up because I can't find a single reference to it anywhere, not even on Bulbapedia. Apparently it's just based off of the smiley face, yeah, as well as amoebas and undifferentiated cells, which is okay I guess, but disappointing. 3.5 stars. As for its design, I mean it's literally a pink blob with a smiley face. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this one. Even the polls were all over the place, with 3 and 5 stars being the 2 most popular picks, oddly enough. But as I've said before, the polls don't decide the score, they're just a fun reference point, so I can't give it over 2.5 stars, giving Ditto the final score of 2.75 stars. Will Eevee be able to break into the top 5, or at least score higher than Pikachu? We're rating them all, and Eevee is decent in battle if you remember we're judging it based on when you'd realistically be using it, and in that case its balanced spread of stats aren't bad at all, and adaptability boosted quick attacks and swifts are really solid, 3.5 stars in battle prowess. Then it's actually available earlier and earlier as the generations go on, so it'll average out to 4.5 stars for availability. Eevee's concept is obviously incredible. From having traits of cats and dogs, it was specifically supposed to resemble children's memories of pets, on top of the whole basis of Eevee being its unstable DNA, causing it to evolve into a number of Pokemon for a number of reasons. 5 stars. Its design then I think does an amazing job of portraying the first part of that. It's incredibly adorable, arguably the cutest Pokemon of them all, with the fluffy mane and tail, the semblance of dog and cat features, but it doesn't really do anything with the whole unstable DNA idea. It just looks like a cute fluffy pet. I was on the fence here, and in the polls, 5 stars does win over 4 in a close victory, so I'll end up going with 4.5 stars, meaning its final score is 4.375, not quite in the top 5, but beating Pikachu's score by quite a bit. What's your favorite evolution? Oh god, I'm not looking forward to the comments on this one. Vaporeon is up next as we rate them all. It was by far my most used evolution before the internet ruined it, and well, it still is. 130 HP, 110 special attack, and 95 special defense is amazing. Its move pool is pretty simple, but that's fine because with Surf, Ice Beam, Acid Armor, and Baby Doll Eyes on top of Water Absorb, Vaporeon can take hits with the best of them and return the favor. It's one of the best early gen water types for sure. 4.5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability is going to stay the same as Eevee since water stones are easy to find early on in every game but OG Johto. Its concept as an Eevee that mutated into a semi-aquatic creature is awesome, as well as taking inspiration from mermaids, the pun of catfish, as well as multiple ties to folklore and mythology. Easy 5 stars. Its design has always been one of my favorites. I think it perfectly portrays the idea of a semi-aquatic mammal, almost a mermaid cat look, and a lot of you agree. Surprisingly, it's not the favorite evolution. Jolteon takes that cake, but I think it's easily a 5-star design here, and the polls on both platforms agree, giving Vaporeon 4.75 stars overall and a spot in our top 5. But did you know that Vaporeon... Jolteon has always been one of my least favorite evolutions. We're rating them all, and we'll get into why later, but at least in terms of battle prowess, Jolteon is a monster. I think it's without a doubt the best Gen 1 electric type. With 130 speed, 110 special attack, and 95 special defense, it is the archetype of fast electric sweeper. It doesn't actually get Thunder Wave until mid to late game in most regions, which kind of sucks, but let's be honest, all you really need for this thing to do is send out fast T-bolts, and it does that wonderfully. 4.5 stars in battle prowess. Its availability is the same as Eevee and Vaporeon's at 4.5 stars, and its concept is basically an Eevee that embodied electricity, and that's really cool, while also being based on a variety of speedy land mammals and even a lightning dog from Japanese mythology. 5 stars. But as I said at the start, I've always disliked Jolteon's design. I even said that in this short from almost 2 years ago, and it didn't go over very well then either. And I can see why, since Jolteon is apparently the fan favorite in the community. You guys on this platform vote 5 stars for everything, but this one seems to be more grounded, giving Jolteon 4 stars. And I know that back in Gen 1, spikes just equaled electric type. I get it, and honestly, I just don't really like it. But I know that I'm more or less alone on this one. I know that this is a good and well-liked design. 4 stars. Which gives Jolteon the final score of 4.5 stars and a spot in the top 5. Poor Flareon, the literal redheaded stepchild of the evolutions. We're rating them all, and Flareon's main downside is its performance in battle, which seems crazy since its stats are nuts. 130 attack, 110 special defense, and even 95 in special attack. Don't get me wrong, it can still be really strong in the early gens even just by giving it EQ and Shadow Ball. And 95 special attack flamethrowers aren't bad at all. Thankfully it does get Fire Fang and Flare Blitz in in the later gens, it's really solid, but it's just not as good as the other evolutions, 4 stars. Its availability is once again 4.5 stars, just like the others, and its concept is also super similar, being an Eevee that adapts to, well, fire, as well as being based on a red fox and other mammals, and that's amazing. But unlike the others, it seems to lack any other interesting aspects, so 4.5 stars. Then its design is pretty widely accepted as being the worst of the 3, but still not a bad design by any means. I think it stays the most true to Eevee's look, just getting bigger, fluffier, and red, which is good for sure, but I think it just needed something more to make it a better looking fire type. And it seems like most of you agree here, 3 stars, leaving Flareon at the final score of 4 stars and without a spot on the top 5. Do you think any of the Pokemon left other than the Legends will make it on? Porygon is so unique among Gen 1 Pokemon, I just wish it was better. We're rating them all, and those stats, for what was at the time a Pokemon that couldn't evolve, are just not good. It really can't even take advantage of any stab normal moves until Gen 4, so before then it's going to be really reliant on TMs, which to be fair, it does get some really good ones, but with 40 speed and mid stats. Otherwise, 2.5 stars for battle prowess. As for availability, it's actually only available before the post game in 2 regions, Kanto and Sinnoh, where you can get it before the 4th gym in both. Remember, we only judge Pokemon on the games they're actually available in for a playthrough, 4 stars. It's then pretty obviously based on polygons, but more specifically polygonal mesh used in graphic, with its shape being based on paper cranes. But even better is the fact that the developers included Porygon in the game specifically out of irony and to stick it to the critics, which is just great, 4 stars. And I honestly think its design is incredible. It skirts the line so well between simplicity and abstract complexity, while also being super unique and somehow also cute. The colors are also just really pleasing to the eye. I'm actually recording this right after posting the polls, so we'll see how alone I am on this one, but I think this is easily a 5-star design, giving Porygon the final score of 3.875 stars. All praise Lord Helix, or whatever, but does anyone actually ever choose this thing over Kabuto? We're rating them all, and its stats are very min-maxed, with 100 defense and 90 special attack, but being pretty bad at everything else. It's another weird one to rate for battle prowess, since by the time you can revive this thing, your party should be around level 40 anyway, and in the time it takes you to get it to level 40, it'll definitely be outclassed, so you'll probably either switch train it or XP share it anyway, so but you could give it Surf and it'll be okay, 3 stars. The early fossils as a whole, I'm going to treat similarly to the version exclusives and starters, since you can typically only get 1 of 2 of them in the games it's available in before the post game, which is actually only Kanto and then Ultra Sun and Move, so it'll average out to 3 stars. Ammonite is then literally based on an Ammonite, so another one of those literally just that animal concept, but it will get a boost since the idea of being an ancient and extinct animal that gets revived is admittedly really cool, 3 stars. Its design is then obviously just that exact concept put to life, not very creative or interesting at all, but somehow manages to be adorable? I don't know if it's the little blue squid arms or the big dumb eyes, but Ammonite is just a cute little guy. I was thinking around 3 to 3.5 stars here, and you guys seem to agree for the most part, so 3.5 stars, which gives Ammonite the final score of 3.125 stars. Amistar is a very weird but underrated Pokemon. We're rating them all, and its stats are pretty good. 125 defense and 115 special attack is really nice. Even its 70s in HP and special defense aren't awful. Its typing is then just also pretty good, splitting the amount of weaknesses and resistances basically right down the middle. Its move pool is also pretty good, Ancient Power, Surf, Ice Beam, and Shell Smash, which is amazing obviously, you won't ever get that in a normal playthrough. Its redeeming quality is both its ability Swift Swim and or the Tiempa Rock Polish. If you can fix this thing's awful speed, it can be pretty awesome, 3.5 stars. Its availability will start off at Ammonite's 3 stars, but what level you revive it at is drastically different per game. In Red and Blue you get it at 30, in Fire Red and Leaf Green you get it at 5, then in Alola 15, and in Let's Go at 44. So I think the positives and negatives balance it out, 3 stars. Its concept is then the exact same as Ammonite, so it'll stay 3 stars, but its design I think is actually a direct downgrade. Where Ammonite got away with being a bit boring because it was actually really cute and appealing, Amistar is pretty much just what you would expect from an ancient deep sea Ammonite Nautilus Pokemon, 3 stars. Giving Amistar the exact same score as Ammonite, 3.125 stars. Will Kabuto outscore Lord Helix itself? Let's see, we're rating them all, and Kabuto, similarly to Ammonite, you probably won't ever actually use in battle, you'll just grind it up. But if you do, before the physical special split, it was quite a bit worse with it being a physical attacker, since back then it wasn't going to have any good rock moves at all, and the water moves, that it also doesn't learn actually, were special. Wow, this thing's moveset was actual garbage. At least they gave it Aqua Jet and Alola, but Kabuto is just really bad actually, especially considering Fossil's late evolution, 1.5 stars. Its availability is the same as Ammonite's at 3 stars, and its concept is also super similar, being based on the extinct Trilobite and the still living fossil, the Horseshoe Crab, which is super simple, but the whole revived fossil thing is awesome and gets a boost, 3 stars. Its design, however, is still good, but very different. Where Ammonite is cute, Kabuto is actually really creepy, with the whole silhouette of a face and the red eyes, but it works for it. You guys are a lot higher on this one than I am though, I say 3 stars, bringing Kabuto to the final score of 2.625, which means apparently I've been choosing the wrong fossil my whole life because this is definitely worse than Ammonite, but hey, it escapes the bottom 5. Is Kabutops an ancient Scyther ancestor, Genesec's original form, or both? We're rating them all, and Kabutops is awesome, but its stat spread is unsatisfying. Over 100 300 attack and defense is really nice, it really won't take advantage of its water moves at all in the early gens, where its move pool is just horrible, and honestly its TM capability isn't much better. However, in the Alola and Let's Go games, that's a very different story. It still only gets one good move by level up, Aqua Jet, but its TMs are so much better. Swords Dance, Rock Slide, X Scissor, then Rock Polish or Rain Dance, Swift Swim to patch up its speed, and it can be really scary. But we have to balance out the whole picture here, and in that case I think Kabutops ends up getting at best a 3-star in battle prowess. Its availability is the same as the last 3 fossils at 3 stars, but its concept is slightly better. It's obviously still based on a horseshoe crab, but now also takes inspiration from this prehistoric arthropod that was more predatory, which they obviously leaned pretty heavily on and is just a lot cooler. 3.5 stars. As for its design though, I have to admit I think it's just a worse looking Scyther, but it does portray that concept really well, and it doesn't take any research to know that this is supposed to be a terrifying prehistoric horseshoe crab scythe monster. I think it's an awesome design, but I don't agree with the heavy 5s in the polls. 4 stars, giving Kabutops 3.375 stars overall, the top fossil for now. Aerodactyl is one of, if not the best fossil Pokemon. We're rating them all, and its stats are honestly not as high as I thought. 130 speed is great, but I could have sworn it had higher attack than 105, which is still really good for sure. Its move pool in the early gens was bad, just like most Pokemon, but in Gen 6 and 7, it's great. It gets the Elemental Fangs, Iron Head, Crunch, and still gets some great TMs like Earthquake, Rock Slide, and Rock Polish. One of the best flying types for a playthrough for sure. 4.5 stars in battle prowess. In Kanto, you can revive it on Cinnabar Island, but you could technically go there after the 5th gym, but you can get it before the 2nd gym in Kalos and pretty late game in Alola, so that'll average out to 3.5 stars. Its concept is similar to the other fossils. It's based on an extinct animal or dinosaur that was revived, but also seems to take some inspiration from dragons or wyverns, which is pretty cool. 3.5 stars. Its design, however, I think is by far the best of the Kanto fossils. It portrays the pterodactyl dragon mix really well, with the massive intimidating jaws, the arrow tail, nice pun, and the really nice touch of purple wings. Fun fact, it actually won our fossil bracket last year, so no surprise 5 stars leads the polls, but I don't quite agree. It's a little too goofy and misproportionate for 5 stars for me. 4.5 stars, giving Aerodactyl the final score of 4 stars, which is to no one's surprise the best fossil score. Mega Aerodactyl is up next as we rate them all, and it's obviously awesome in battle, with 135 attack, 150 speed, and its incredible ability Tough Claws, not to mention its awesome coverage and solid TMs. Mega Aerodactyl is an easy 5 stars for battle prowess, and its availability is nuts compared to other Megas. X and Y is the only game it's available in before post-game where you can actually get Aerodactyl and the Mega Stone before you even get the Mega Ring. It's likely going to be the first Mega Stone you find. Easy 5 stars. Then the concept being that this Mega Evolution is actually just the restoration of Aerodactyl's true genetics that were lost due to the reanimation process is a really awesome concept. 5 stars. And its design, if I did just what the polls told me, could make this the second ever first 5-star Pokemon. But as I've explained, the polls don't decide the score. They're just a fun way to interact and a nice reference point to keep me from being too biased. And with that being said, I think this Mega is actually a downgrade from Aerodactyl. The concept is amazing, but I think the design just does too much. The rocks on the wings, tail, and back are really cool, but I think the giant rock beard and eyebrows and such just look really dumb. It's still an awesome design, but a downgrade. 4 stars. But hey, that still gives Mega Aerodactyl 4.75 stars overall, tying for second on our Mega's top 5. Will Snorlax make it into our top 5 or even get the next perfect score? We're rating them all, and this thing is obviously a massive wall, literally and figuratively. It's 160 HP and 110 special defense, plus rest shenanigans make this thing at the very least annoying to take out, but its attack is honestly slept on. 110 is really good, especially back in True Gen 1 with Hyper Beam being physical and not requiring a cooldown if it gets the KO. But even with modern mechanics, Snorlax is awesome. Both of its abilities are really useful, and its move pool just gets better and better with absolutely insane coverage throughout the generations. Easy 5 stars. Its availability ranges from Route 1 in Alola to around Gym 4 in most other gens, and Munchlax's garbage encounter method along with the Gen 3 Feebas is the exception to the it's not how hard it is rule and will get a dock, but even with that, it'll still average out to 4.5 stars. Snorlax's concept, however, is pretty much just literally a perpetually eating and hibernating bear, which seems boring at first, until you find out that its appearance and behavior of constantly eating and sleeping were directly inspired by this Game Freak planner, and I'm sorry, but that's hilarious. 4 stars. But its design then does the absolute most with that concept. It's a very simple design, but that's not a bad thing. It portrays the concept perfectly as just a mountain of gluttonous sleepy bear. It's also clearly powerful and dangerous, while remaining adorable and a nap-worthy spot. That's an easy 5 stars, and that means Snorlax gets 4.625 stars overall, landing in the top 5. The Arctic one. Articuno was a lot better back in Gen 1. We're rating them all, and its base 125 special was amazing as offense and defense, but in Gen 2 onward, onward, they nerfed its special attack down to 95, which is still good for sure, but isn't amazing, especially for a legendary Pokemon. It's actually really bulky and defensive, which is a very odd choice for an Ice Flying type, not a very defensive typing. Pretty much all you're gonna click here is Ice Beam or Fly. It's great against Giovanni and Lance, but it's actually pretty underwhelming for a legend. Let me know your thoughts, but I'm going with 4.5 stars. Availability was a big question for legends, but after literal thousands of suggestions and votes, we landed on comparing it to other legends, and in that case, Articuno being available after the 5th gym is an easy 5 stars. It's then based on a number of different birds throughout mythology related to symbols of good fortune, which ties into the dex entries of it rescuing people on mountains, which is obviously really cool, 5 stars. Its sprites and 3D models I don't think do it justice at all. It looks so much better in the anime. In game, it just doesn't really look all that legendary. Granted, it's still obviously a big, majestic, mystical bird, so I think it's still really good, don't get me wrong, 4 stars. So Articuno's final score is 4.625 stars. Will Zapdos outscore Articuno as we rate them all? Well, it's by far my most used of the trio. Electric Flying is an amazing dual typing, and its stats I think are distributed much better. 125 special attack, 100 speed, and about 90 in everything else. Just give it Drill Peck and Thunderbolt and have fun crushing your way through the latter half of Kanto, 5 stars. Its availability is going to be the same as Articuno, you can check that one for the explanation, but both of them are available after the 5th gym, which is nuts for a legend, 5 stars. Zapdos is then based on the Native American legend of the Thunderbird, a spirit of thunder and lightning that took the form of a giant bird whose wing beats create thunder. That's amazing, 5 stars. Its design, however, I know it's the fan favorite, and I'm sure the polls will end up 5 stars just like every other Pokemon, and it for sure looks the most legendary out of the 3. I think its face, beak, and giant talons are so awesome, but god, what are those wings, man? I'm sorry, but they look so dumb and flat. It has the same issues as Jolteon for me. Make it spiky and yellow, and ooh, you've got an electric type. 4 stars, though I'm sure that that'll still be way too low for most of you, giving Zapdos the final score of 4.75 stars, a shocking upset. I'm sorry. Will Moltres match the rest of its trio score, or even Charizard's? We're rating them all, and fire types just aren't great in Kanto, and even so, I probably have either a Charizard or Arcanine anyway most of the time, but that's not to say it's bad by any means. 125 special attack and 100 attack make it a really nice mixed attacker capable of using both of its type stab moves. But what endgame battle are you even planning on using this for in Kanto? Bruno, maybe, and I guess Champion Blue. But between Stat XP and Gen 1 or EVs that you'll just naturally get throughout your playthrough, your Charizard or Arcanine is probably just unironically better, or at least on par with Moltres. I honestly don't see why you would make the switch, 4 stars. Its availability is also worse, not being available until Victory Road. Still decent for a legend though, I suppose, 3.5 stars. Its concept though is similarly awesome, being based on quite a few different legendary firebirds like the Phoenix, 5 stars. There are a lot of jokes to be made about Moltres' design, and it's definitely not the best looking legendary, but it's still an awesome looking Pokemon, let's be honest. What's not to like about a giant flying firebird? Sorry, I'm a dad, I can't help the dad jokes, but it's 4 stars. So Moltres' final score is 4.125 stars, not only the worst of the trio, but straight up worse than Charizard. Pseudo-legends as a whole follow the trend of being utter garbage until they reach their final evolution, and well, Dratini kind of started that trend. We're rating them all, and its stats are really bad, but this is another instance of you'll probably never actually use it, you'll just grind it up to level 30. But if you were to use it in that time frame, oof. Sure, T-Wave and Dragon Rage are useful, but it's pretty awful otherwise. 2 stars in battle prowess, and I think that's generous. As for availability, it's very black and white. No, not Unova, it's only post-game there. I mean, it's actually available really early in both Kanto and Johto for the most part, but then pretty much endgame in Crystal, Kalos, and Alola. So sorry little guy, but that averages out to 2.5 stars. Dratini is then pretty obviously based on, well, a baby dragon, specifically the more sea serpent style of Japanese dragons, which is cool for sure. Then the fact that it used to be considered a mythical Pokemon due to being so rarely seen is pretty cool, 4 stars. As for its design, it's cute, for sure, and I don't really have anything else to say about it. There's not a lot to it, and that's not a bad thing. I like simple designs, it's cute, it gets the point across, 3.5 stars, which gives Dratini a pretty disappointing 3 stars overall. He tried his best, okay? Dragonair is up next as we rate them all, but will it redeem Dratini's score? Well, in battle, Dragonair is at least usable, but still not very good. Its balanced stats leave a lot to be desired, especially since it can learn some amazing TMs, but they're all special moves, which Dragonair isn't that good at. Not to mention its actual garbage level up moves. So it does get some utility and some really nice coverage, so it's not bad, but it's not amazing. 3 stars. As we went over with Dratini's availability, it is very different across the regions, and a lot of the time you can actually catch Dragonair in the same place, but otherwise you have to grind your useless Dratini up to level 30. So I think that actually balances out, and we'll keep it at the same 2.5 stars. Its concept, however, is way more interesting. It's obviously still a sea serpent-esque dragon, but now it is also based on this specific dragon, a proto-dragon, that if it lives long enough, a jewel will fall from the sky, and if it catches it, it will become a true dragon. Also maybe some visual references to Hermes' staff, but either way, that concept is amazing. 5 stars. Its design is then a really nice evolution from Dratini, shiny, and it does do a really good job of appearing majestic, mysterious, or even mythical. It once again is a really simple design, which isn't a bad thing by any means. It looks really good. 4 stars, bringing Dragonair to the final score of 3.625 stars. Dragonite is very polarizing when it comes to fans' opinions, but how will it do as we rate them all? At least in terms of battle prowess, it's pretty straightforward. It's a pseudo-legend, so it has a 600 base stat total, and so it's obviously a beast. 134 attack, 100 special attack, and otherwise great stats across the board. Its move pool is simple, but also great, with D-Dance, Fly or Wing Attack, Dragon Claw or Outrage, and then plenty of coverage on both physical and special side. So once you finally get a Dragonite, you don't really need much else. 5 stars. But like I just said, once you finally get it, which is really late. Dratini's availability was 2.5 for being available early-ish in Kanto and Johto, while being late game everywhere else. But the fact that you have to grind your pretty mid Dragonair all the way to level 55, which is going to be at the earliest Victory Road, is going to take it down half a star to 2 stars. Its concept is then the end result of Dragonairs, being based on an Imugi? I don't know. It's a proto-dragon that lives 1,000 years and then catches a gem, turning it into a true dragon. Once again, 5 stars. Its design is the polarizing part. A lot of people dislike Dragonite's design for being either too plump or not intimidating enough, or for thinking it just doesn't fit the evolution line at all. But as we've just established, it absolutely does. Similarly to the Magikarp to Gyarados evolution, they look nothing alike, but that's the whole point. I think Dragonite does an amazing job of portraying that concept while also just being an incredible looking Pokemon. It looks both cuddly and powerful, similar to the kinds of dragons that we saw from other shows back then. My only complaint is that I wish it would have at least kept the gems as a connection to Dragonair, a popular idea in fan art. 4.5 stars. Which leaves the first pseudo-legendary with the final score of 4.125 stars and without a spot in the top 5. Mewtwo, one of the coolest and strongest Pokemon of all time. We're rating them all, and I can't believe that we made it to the end of Gen 1. Do I really even need to discuss Mewtwo's battle prowess? I mean, look at these stats. Not to mention how utterly broken the Psychic type was in Gen 1, along with the fact that it can learn more or less every TM. Probably the easiest 5 stars in the whole 2D era. Its availability is going to be rough. So before we get there, I want to do something that I never do in videos. I want to thank you guys for watching and commenting and just being along for the ride with me on this journey. It's seriously been so amazing and so much fun so far. I know you probably don't care, but my channels across the 3 platforms have grown almost literally tenfold. And the dream of doing this full time is becoming more of a goal than a dream, which I never thought was possible. So I hope you come hang out in between generations when I take a break and try to stream some Pokemon. Anyway, its availability is obviously garbage. You guys voted on judging legends compared to other legends, but even in that case, Mewtwo is just about the last thing you can do in Kanto. So as much as I hate to do it, that's 1 star availability. Its concept, well, had a whole amazing movie about it. It's the man-made clone of Mew that turned vicious, one of the most well-known Pokemon concepts out there. 5 stars. And finally, its design. I strongly dislike most humanoid Pokemon, but Mewtwo is in a class of its own, clearly being the result of human meddling with Mew's DNA. The purple tail really comes out of nowhere, but at the same time, it gives it so much character, along with the super unique hands and feet. It just as a whole looks legendary. I don't know how to explain it. And I also don't know how you could argue this isn't 5 stars. So even with its awful availability, Mewtwo's final score is 4 stars, at the bottom of the legends list so far. Am I the only one who forgets that Mega Mewtwo X exists? We're rating them all, and at least in terms of battle prowess, this thing is obviously just bonkers. 190 attack, 154 special attack, I mean, come on. That and psychic fighting is actually a pretty decent typing. I don't think this is going to shock anyone that it's 5 stars. We've been rating Mega's availability compared to other Megas and Legends to other Legends, and for Mega Mewtwo X, it doesn't really matter either way. However you want to judge it, it's still 1 star at best for availability. However, unlike most other Megas, I really can't find any sort of concept for Mega Mewtwo X. There's 1 Dex entry, which just talks about how strong it is physically now, which, like, okay, sure, but that's all you could come up with for Mewtwo? I'm sorry, but that deserves a dock down to 4 stars. Then its design, I actually think, is also a direct downgrade from Mewtwo. It's still a cool looking Pokemon on its own, for sure, but it just doesn't really feel like it belongs. Of all the Pokemon to get a Mega, Mewtwo didn't need one, let alone 2 of them. 3 stars. And if you think I'm just hating, the polls agree with me, but no, they do not decide the score. Anyway, that gives Mega Mewtwo X 3.25 stars overall. Will Mega Mewtwo Y do better than its other forms? We're rating them all, and in battle prowess, its stats are ridiculously strong. So it's obviously gonna once again be 5 stars. Availability is, once again, awful compared to other Legends and Megas. You're not gonna get to use this thing until pretty much everything else is done in the game. It's pretty much just a reward for beating it all. 1 star. Its concept, similarly to Mega Mewtwo X is pretty thin, with a slight difference that I think this change makes more sense. While X just decided to be strong basically, Mega Mewtwo Y feels more like it mega evolved into what it was meant to be originally, 4.5 stars. Its design then definitely portrays that well. It looks a lot more similar to Mew, but well, Mega. I honestly think this should have been just Mega Mew, but anyway, yeah, it looks really cool for sure. It looks like some insanely intelligent alien or something, but it's still a downgrade from regular Mewtwo, 4.5 stars, giving Mega Mewtwo Y the final score of 3.75 stars. Only one more video for Gen 1. Then in between generations, I'm actually going to take a little bit of a break, and I'm going to try to stream some Pokemon on here actually, so I hope you join me. See you there. Number 151, Mew, is finally here. We're rating them all, and it's actually going to be a fairly interesting one to figure out. Its stats are a clean 100 across the board, which is really awesome, of course. It's at the same level of the pseudos, just totally balanced, which is both a positive and a negative. I don't know if its stats alone would make it a 5-star Pokemon, but it being able to learn literally every single move in the game does. 5 stars. Oh boy, here we go. Its availability is awful, just like every other mythical. So with that being said, I ran a poll to see how you guys would want to handle the mythical's availability. Man, I'm really asking for it, bringing up polls and availability in the same sentence. But the majority of you voted to keep the availability rating as it is, and compare it to other legends. So I know a lot of you don't like it, but that's clearly just the louder, smaller group. Anyway, Mew was completely unavailable other than in limited time events for over 20 years, until you can finally get one of them in Brilliant Diamond if you have a Let's Go save file. So hey, I guess that keeps it from being 0.5 stars. But don't worry, it's under the truck. Its concept we all know and love. It's the last common ancestor of all other Pokemon. Do I really need to dive deeper? 5 stars. Its design is then once again incredible. Absolutely adorable, with cat-like features while also pretty clearly being somewhat embryo-like. And that's pretty clearly a 5-star design, bringing Mew to the final score of 3.875 stars. All jokes and finger pointing aside, I really do appreciate you guys coming along this journey with me, and I can't wait to stream and get started on Gen 2. See you there.